Yesterday, of course, being Thanksgiving, we got that little tease of Rivalry Week. We get the little taste. It's almost like helping mom cook in the kitchen and sneaking a taste here and there. The appetizer came today, really strong, really solid, really pleasing appetizer today with some really good football games. And if you're into conference championships and you haven't completely sold out to the invitational, the playoff invitational, then you enjoyed the football today. And it meant a whole lot to people in North Carolina, to people in Washington. And then, of course, tomorrow is it. Tomorrow is it. Welcome into the voice of college football on a Friday night, Black Friday, after Thanksgiving. And I should probably take down my videos of Dave Doeren. If you know anything about what I'm talking about, I should probably take those down. No, they definitely have dated well, regardless of what happens going forward. This is season number 9 for Dave Doeren. Dave Doeren could possibly get to an ACC championship game. What a finish. What a finish in Raleigh-Durham between North Carolina State and Mac Brown's Heels. That was a great game. That was a fun game to watch. North Carolina should have had it shut down after a 50-yard field goal with a $1:30 left. But no, they gave up the long touchdown pass and an onside kick recovery by NC State, and bam, the Wolfpack keep their ACC championship hopes alive with an improbable comeback in the final 90 seconds, down by 2 scores to North Carolina, and win it. And despite North Carolina State's amazing comeback, I still am donning the Carolina blue, the powder blue. And right now, Wazzu is blasting the Huskies of Washington, blasting them 40-15, 40-13. And so Washington State will kick back tomorrow, watch Oregon State. And if they get a upset win out of the Beavers, they will be headed to the Pac-12 championship game. How about that? Oregon will have fallen from Final Four playoff bound to sitting at home for the Pac-12 championship game and watching Wazzu, 7-5 Wazzu. That is the status and the current condition of the Pac-12. A 7-5 team could be playing in the Pac-12 championship game. Arkansas won 7 games in 3 seasons. They won basically nothing outside the ACC, out of the SEC, in 2 consecutive seasons. Won 7 total games over the last 2 years of Chad Morris and the first year of Sam Pittman. They won their 8th game today. And Utah, of course, closes out a strong run in defeating Colorado. Utah had already clinched a Pac-12 championship game berth, and they did it in style today, 38-15 over Colorado. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We will take your calls at 860-499-3332, 3332, 499-3332. 860 is the area code. Appreciate everybody being here. We are right in the middle of Rivalry Week. And so let's have a good time talking college football. When I had my second helping of leftovers today, it's almost like clockwork. That's it. The first time around was phenomenal. The leftovers were fine. They were good. Sometimes people will say that the leftovers are better. The leftovers are never better, truly better, but they're good. They're good. If the food's really good, then the leftovers, depending on what it is, it's going to be good. And Thanksgiving was made to be good for leftovers. The first round of leftovers, great. The second one, I can get through. And 2 rounds of leftovers today. think I'm tapped out on the leftovers, except for my cranberry salad, not cranberry sauce. Don't make that mistake. Cranberry salad. Few people know about it. Few people knew about it around the table at Thanksgiving, but the cranberry salad was exceptional, and I will finish that off. But the leftovers, I've pretty much tapped out on the leftovers and made up 3 meals. I don't know how you feel about the leftovers, but I will be ready to venture into post-Thanksgiving food tomorrow. Cincinnati won today against East Carolina. I saw about 3 plays. I cannot really necessarily comment on the game. They took on an East Carolina team that's much improved. They came into the game at 7-4. Cincinnati was dominant in the game. Really not challenged. It was 21-3 quickly. They marched on to a victory of 38-13, 35-13. And again, right now, Washington State is making a bid to go to the Pac-12 championship game and eventually the Rose Bowl. Ohio State fans, Michigan fans, if you're not careful, if you blow the big game tomorrow, you could be seeing Washington State in the Rose Bowl. That might be good for the win total, but it's not going to gain a whole lot of respect. You could see Washington State in the Rose Bowl. Washington State defeats Washington in the Apple Cup, one of the underrated rivalries in college football. 40-13 right now. Cincinnati wins 35-13. Earlier in the day, was this not predictable? Was this not apropos that Nebraska would be playing a really good football team, a ranked team, in which Scott Frost is now 0-14. He's in NFL season pre-1977, pre-1978. 0-14 against ranked teams at Nebraska. 0-14. Up 21-6, up by 15 points at the end of the third quarter. 5 minutes left in the third quarter. Nebraska's up 21-6. Iowa made some big blunders to take points off the board twice. Nebraska up 21-6. It being Nebraska, I was not in any way marking it down as a Nebraska win. No. But I thought Iowa doesn't score fast. They don't score quickly. They don't score much. They have a hard time scoring. Well, they got the special teams and the defense into it. Iowa scored all of 1 touchdown offensively, and that was with 3 or 4 minutes left in the game to win the game. Iowa scores 22 straight points and beats Nebraska 28-21. I posted a video after the game which ran down Scott Frost's numbers at Nebraska. You want to check out some brutal numbers over the course of 4 seasons. Scott Frost at Nebraska. Scott Frost by the numbers, courtesy here, the voice of college football on our Nebraska channel. I also posted some other, I love going through history. And what I did was I sized up some of the big rivalries this weekend, and I looked at the all-time comparisons for the entire history of the 2 programs in terms of the series record, the all-time winning records, winning percentage, where they rank, national championships, conference championships, number of weeks in the AP poll, number of weeks in the top 10, number of weeks or seasons finishing ranked, number of seasons finishing ranked in the top 10, number of NFL draft picks. I compare these schools' first round picks, consensus All-Americans, Heisman Trophy winners, and then, of course, to give better perspective on it and not just look historically going all the way back to the Stone Ages, I've looked at and broken down these rivalries since 2000, which really puts it into perspective and gives an interesting breakdown as well, since 2000. And so check out those videos. Ohio State, Michigan, Clemson, South Carolina, Oregon, Oregon State, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Bedlam tomorrow at noon Eastern time, 11 Central. And I also, again, did that with one Scott Frost and his coaching record of 44 games at Nebraska. Wow. 21-6 at home, leading against the Iowa Hawkeyes. So the Hawkeyes are now 10-2. They could win the Big Ten Western Division. They need a Minnesota win. They need a Minnesota win. And the Purdue-Indiana game may factor in as well. So it is still in play between Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa, although Wisconsin is the team that controls its own destiny. Badgers win like they typically do against Minnesota, 14 out of 15, and they will head to Indianapolis in the Big Ten championship game. I got a request last night to take my predictions from the beginning of the season and compare them to the final results. So after we know the final results, meaning let's get through the championship games, and I'll do that. I'll post a video and I'll compare my preseason predictions to what actually happened. They could look really pretty in the SEC. Well, they actually do. I'm spot on in terms of an SEC championship game. The ACC, way off. The Pac-12, way off. The Big 12, I could split there. The Big 10, I could be spot on. We shall see. We are just about 12 hours away from two of the biggest games of the entire season: Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State. So I appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. You guys always show up. You are fine college football fans, patriots, fine people out there. The real MVP, he's here. Hummus Hero here. Yes, entertaining, wasn't it? UNC and NC State, and NC State could go to the ACC championship game. Who are you rooting for? Do you care between Wake and NC State? Who would you like to see play Pitt in the conference championship game? Between Oregon and Washington State, who would you like to see play in the Pac-12 championship game against Utah? I got to think that most people outside of the state of Oklahoma who do not root for the Sooners are rooting for the Cowboys, just to see something different. Let's see two different teams in the Big 12 championship game. And lest we forget, Florida State could win the Florida State Championship tomorrow. That's a noon Eastern time game. Screen number one's got to be on the game. Screen number two, Oklahoma State, Bedlam. And screen number three, before I look at the schedule, Florida State, I believe. Clemson, South Carolina, do they play at noon as well? I hope not. No, that's a night game. I actually wouldn't mind seeing Clemson, South Carolina for the first time in a long time. The spread is not 1 million. It's 11. Hope you caught my picks today. Did you get my predictions today? 4-1 against the spread. 4-1 against the spread. Missouri could not stay close with Arkansas. And that was my first inclination, was to take Arkansas big in that game. They were a 2-touchdown favorite, 14.5 points. But I thought, man, that's a lot of points, and Mizzou can score, and maybe they'll get a backdoor cover, and they failed to do that. 34-17, Arkansas wins. Hogs 8-4. Go bowling. They should come out with a pretty nice bowl invitation, and Mizzou's made a bowl game as well as 6-6 near the bottom of the barrel of the SEC. So wherever the bottom teams in the SEC go, there's a Liberty Bowl possibility for Mizzou, or the Texas Bowl taking on a Big 12 team. But 4-1 against the spread. I took North Carolina with the points. I took Iowa. They were either a 1-point dog or a 1-point favorite, depending on your site. They were somewhere in that range of pick 'em. So I took Iowa. I took, again, North Carolina with almost a touchdown. I took Colorado with 23.5 points against Utah. They lost by whatever the score was. I'd have to look at that. They lost, was that 38-15? They lost by 23.5. That was a close one. And then the other one would be this Washington State game. That was just a 1-point favorite for on the Washington State side playing on the road. 1-point favorite. I didn't even think about that. So if you would have locked into the Voice of College Football on Patreon, 4-1. So we'll see how we do tomorrow. And again, that's not the reason to go over there on Patreon. We'll be announcing what we have planned for the off season concerning Patreon and our website and so forth as we build that out. Let's get to these phone lines here at the Voice of College Football. Who's going to lead off for us?
Hey, Mark, it's One Scoop John. How you doing?
One Scoop John. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's rivalry weekend, and boy, have there been some good games. Whew. So a couple things. Obviously, Washington State. I have not been following either of the Washingtons. I confess, but I logged into this and just I came home from doing some errands and some Black Friday, and I saw they were up to 40. So they have an interim head coach right now, I believe, right?
Yes.
So do you think, and I was asking some Washington State fans who know better than I do, and they all said that if Washington State dominated the game, which I would consider this maybe not a total domination, but certainly quite a few touchdowns, do you think that they may go with him as the actual full-on HC?
Yeah, I haven't talked to anybody that's affiliated with the program or with a Washington State media person. I probably should. Is what I should do, especially if they make it to the Pac-12 championship game. I will be for sure to preview the game. So I can only throw my hands up and take a guess at that. I would expect that he would be in the running considering what he's taken over and what he's done. It's just not a regular situation where a coach underachieves and gets fired at midseason, and you still have the staff in place. I believe they lost 5 assistants as well, and so they pieced together a staff of guys that weren't necessarily coaching in their areas of expertise, and they've pulled this off.
Yeah, I was talking with so they all think that it's going to happen. I didn't see anybody say no other than a Maryland fan, and I don't give them as much credence when talking about Washington State football. But they said because of their interim head coach not getting the gig a couple years ago. But beside the point. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's probably going to happen. But obviously, great. Congrats to them. It may not be quite over yet. I don't know. I logged out, but congrats to them basically. But the big news, obviously, we got the game tomorrow. The game, and I've been eagerly anticipating, and have been trying to consume all the different media and your talks with Steve and everything, which are always entertaining, and it seems like he's a little bit more energetic about the team than before. But so I'm kind of thinking this is going to come down. I'd say, what do you think? I think this is the best matchup since 2016, personally.
Well, it's of course easy to evaluate the other games. So the 2018 matchup on paper was Michigan's game. They had outperformed Ohio State the whole season. They outperformed them against common opponents. They were a 4-point favorite at home. So Vegas certainly thought that was the best matchup in Michigan's favor, and I would agree. We found out otherwise.
Yeah, we got the 2018 is when we got the Big Ten East participation trophy. whatever that joke was, co-champion or whatever.
Co-champion.
Yeah, whoopsie. So I like to call that the participation trophy. But I'd say this year is definitely the matchup, and so I really think it comes down to you've got two for my Wolverines. You've got two first or second round draft picks on the ends, right? You've got Hutch, you've got Ajabo. They've both had 10 sacks, and I was looking up Charles Woodson's sacks, who had 20 in his whole career at Michigan. So I'm like, basically both of them add up to a Woodson. That's pretty cool. And so you look at that, and then CJ Stroud. It seems like they're the like anytime he's faced, a tougher defense. You look at Penn State, but especially Nebraska. They look like such a high-powered offense that maybe the only opportunity that we have to stop is really to bring that pressure from the defense that way, to kind of rattle a little bit, because otherwise you've got Olave is going to go first round, you've got Wilson is going to go first round, you've just got weapons all over the Ohio State offense. So like I give Michigan about 20% chance to win, maybe 25, given the fact that it's at the Big House. But what do you think your like one or two keys to the game would be for Michigan to have any chance at all?
Well, I'd say that what we've been talking about all week and what you just mentioned there is the number one key is that those two players play out of their minds, and no quarterback, I don't care who he is, plays as well with pressure. That's obvious.
Right.
If it's Tom Brady, he doesn't play as well with pressure. Now, does he handle it better because he's better equipped to handle it? Of course, but he doesn't play well. The percentages of effectiveness just are greatly diminished. So that's the key to stopping any passing offense is pressure on the quarterback. The only, I won't call it a weakness for Ohio State, but more of an area of lack is that most college quarterbacks in this day and age will make you pay for pressure if it's not properly distributed, if it's not
right,
if the rush lanes aren't taken care of, if it's not at certain levels, if the rush is not controlled, they'll make you pay. CJ Stroud seems like he's almost refusal to do that. So that would be one thing. Other than that, yeah. I think what I wanted to see as a precursor to this matchup was to see Kenneth Walker wear on the Ohio State defense and see if they were capable of taking a pounding from a top flight back that is not just a great back, but is able to take a pounding and carry it 30 or 35 times. Well, we didn't get to see that, but we may get to see it this week. So I think that's another enormous key to this game is Hassan Haskins and the Michigan offensive line, because they can check off two boxes. They can, of course, wear down the Ohio State defense and, of course, kill the clock and keep the Ohio State offense on the sideline and rusty.
Yeah. One of your somebody in chat, one of the Ohio State fans, had a good point that Stroud plays elite defensive ends every day in practice. So that's fair. Now, when can you replicate the Big House? Can you replicate some of those different things? In practice, it may be hard. So I do agree with what they're saying, but at the same time, like, it is a bit of a different environment when you're playing practice versus playing at the Big House with 100,000 plus fans. Yeah. And I think that's a big advantage we have.
Yeah, any team can say that that's one of the best teams in the country, that they typically face lesser players when they go to the games on Saturday. But CJ Stroud's not getting hit in practice. So
yeah,
he's not getting hit in practice. And the intensity of the play is not there.
So as a Michigan fan, of course, I feel compelled to predict for my team, but I'm thinking it's going to be about 41-40 Michigan. Last field goal kick at the end of the game.
Okay.
I think it's going to be high offense. We know that Ohio State's going to have a high offense, and I think there's a little bit of trickeration up Gaddis' sleeve. We saw, small morsels of that throughout the season. There was a sweet play to end the game or to clutch the game. Penn State to the tight end. We saw some interesting things. I'm hoping we with Corum back, they have some different looks. With maybe having some RPOs going, maybe Haskins and Corum both. I just hope we can really, because there is a lot of talent on the offensive side, but the play calling needs to match that. And I feel like the play calling in the past 5 years and 6 years has fallen short of what these players, I think, deserve sometimes, because they play out of their minds, and so I think I'm hoping we see more of that.
Yeah, I do think Ohio State's better, and it's going to take a lot for me not to think that Ohio State's better. But we see games played every Saturday in which the better team doesn't win. I think Michigan is good enough to win the game. They'll just have to play better. They just have to play. A few things have to fall their way, and they can make those things fall their way, meaning obvious. Just bounces of the ball and turnovers would be the most obvious that could go their way.
Yeah. And somebody said 41-40 sounds like the craziest prediction I've heard all week. I've heard way crazier than that for different games, but I think what you just said speaks to that. There needs to be turnovers. There needs to be probably, I'd say 2 at minimum, at least one pick 6 for Michigan to have a shot, because Ohio State, you make one mistake, it's just like playing Alabama. It's just like playing Clemson when they're usually good. Obviously, they're having a bit of a rough year this year, but it's just like playing Alabama. It's just like playing Clemson. It's just like playing Georgia. You make one mistake, and you could be down 14 before you know it. So we really have to minimize mistakes, maximize opportunities, and hope. Fingers are crossed. I know your fingers are crossed the other way, but still, you know what? It's going to be a fun game. I'm excited to have that on the first string TV, and Oklahoma State on the second string TV.
That's it. I do think that Michigan's offense is more explosive than most people give it credit for.
We just got to have the play calling tomorrow to match that. So let's hope Gaddis can bring his big boy pants and call some good stuff.
All right, sir. Well, thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it. Enjoy the game.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Have a great night.
You too. Yes. We are just about 12 hours away from, if you're a Florida or Florida State fan, if you're in Oklahoma State, and of course, Michigan, Ohio State. What other noon games are on the rivalry schedule? I don't know off the top of my head, but if you're a college football fan like me, it doesn't really bring any more intensity to the situation. And I'll speak more to when I was younger, maybe not so much now, although I would say it's still there, that the stakes of the game do not raise the intensity for me, do not make it any more important. If Ohio State was 3-8 and Michigan was whatever they were, 3-8, growing up, those games, I can name all sorts of games in which Ohio State did not have any championship implications on the line, and those games were just as important as playing national championship games. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's not. right or wrong. It's just everybody's personal preference. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
My name is Dean.
Hey, Dean. How are you?
I have good evening. So I have a two-part question about the same topic. Do you think that the two block punts and the onside kick recovery means that UNC should fire their special teams coordinator, or do you think it speaks to NC State's prowess at special teams?
Well, it is a bit alarming that they had 2 kicks blocked in the first half. I don't know what North Carolina's special teams play has been like the entire season. I would not fire a coach based on a couple blocked kicks. If this was being game 12, just another example of poor special teams play, and this has been going on the entire season, then, if somebody's watching or listening that has been tracking North Carolina's special teams play all season and would let us know that it's been substandard the entire season, then yeah, he should be fired. But not just based on one game.
I think that NC State early in this season, I might be wrong about this, but I think they blocked 2 punts versus Boston College. I could be wrong about that. I know they blocked at least 1, but I think they blocked 2 versus Boston College.
I watched much of that game. I don't remember.
I think both of them might have been blocked by the same person, Devin Boykin. The week after that, he got named Special Teams Player of the Week in the ACC for that performance versus Boston College, where he had the block punt. I think it might have been 1. I know there was at least 1.
So
I might have to go back and rewatch that game.
Are you an NC State fan?
I am.
So you've got to be pretty pumped.
Yes, I was.
To go from blowing a game with 90 seconds left down by 9 to win it, and it being a game against your arch rival and a game that could send you to the ACC championship game, that's got to be about the biggest win they've had in how long?
Yes, it's probably the biggest win since 2017 versus Louisville. Maybe earlier this year versus Clemson.
Why was that Louisville game?
Looking back on it, I would say versus Clemson.
Yeah, the Clemson game obviously set this all up, because if you don't beat Clemson in overtime, then they would have already won the division. So why that Louisville game in 2017? What did that lead to? This could lead to an ACC championship game.
Well,
and it's against your rival.
State was very close to making the ACC championship game, but I'm also pretty sure it was Dave Doeren's first win over an AP-ranked team, which Louisville in 2017 was the year where they started out ranked, and I think they tapered off. But that was also the year where they had, I think, that might have been Lamar Jackson's last year. I could be wrong.
It was.
Am.
That was his last year. All right. Anything else, man?
I had another question.
Sure.
How much does it speak to NC State and your favorite ACC coach, Dave Doeren, that they were able to get this win when normally in this situation they would fold, as they've done plenty of times over the past couple of years, with the exception of Clemson and Louisville?
Well, I think they got some help, but they certainly took advantage of it. I didn't see North Carolina's defensive alignment on that long touchdown pass, but didn't appear as though that their safety was completely out of position. But anyway, that said, I think it speaks to not being there, I don't know exactly what. It could be a combination of this particular group of players. It could be Dave Doeren learning and developing as a head coach from his previous mistakes, learning from his mistakes. He's been there for, 9 years? He's coached 130 games or so. So learning what to do in various situations or learning how to prepare his team better for crunch time. And so I think that the last 2 seasons, they've had better results against better competition. I've posted a couple videos that were very critical of Dave Doeren prior to 2020 because he was only winning 38% of his games in conference. He was basically going to bowl games because they were playing very lackluster non-conference schedules. But the last 2 seasons, the program has reached another level.
Yes, I do remember those days where you would go to a conference, where you would go to a bowl game because you were able to beat Western Carolina and ECU and Ball State.
Yep.
Oh, Georgia State, that was another good one I didn't mention.
Yeah, there was a lot of Old Dominion. There was a lot of William and Mary, East Carolina, a lot of those wins.
Yeah. Furman, which they played Furman this year as well. But I do remember those where the only reason you would make a bowl game is because you would beat some no-name. You would beat a FCS team or a very low-level FBS team.
Sure. Yeah,
I think there was one time where they beat, go ahead.
I was just going to say, over the first roughly 8 years of his tenure there, they were winning 38% of their games. So that's basically going 3-5 every year in the conference. I don't know that anyone would be that excited or happy about their head coach going 3-5 in conference play every year. But if you go 3-5 and then you go 4-0 or 3-1 non-conference, you're going to a bowl game. And that's what they kept doing.
I have one more question real quickly.
Sure.
What is your prediction for Wake Forest and Boston College? Do you think Wake Forest will be able to slam the door on the Atlantic? Or do you think Boston College will cause some chaos?
Well, I believe that Clemson is still probably the best team in the conference, and I believe NC State, Pitt are right there as well. I think that there is a small collection of teams atop the conference, and I believe that Duke is the worst team in the conference, and Syracuse is somewhere in that mix, but we've even seen from Syracuse, they can play Wake Forest to overtime. My point being that this conference is the most muddled conference in the nation. It's the most, and which makes it fun to watch. I don't mind it. I have no investment in the ACC on the national stage, so I find it entertaining not knowing who's going to win games. So 10 or 11 of the teams in the ACC can beat each other. You can show me a matchup and it could go one way one week, and if they played the next week, it go the complete opposite way. So it's a bit of a guess. I will say that I have to honor my folks on Patreon, and I make my predictions over there, which include the Wake Forest BC game. But I do think I think BC's I think Wake's like a 4-point favorite the last I saw. Certainly they can score quickly, and they've got a tremendous offense, but they're also injured. There are a lot of injuries on the Wake Forest side. Now for Boston College, Phil Jurkovic's back, and now for a 3rd game or maybe a 4th game, but he hasn't played great statistically since he's come back. So it should be a close one.
That'll probably be the main game I watch because I'm an NC State fan. That's
Sure.
about 12 hours, 4 minutes from right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I would think so. That is going to determine your destiny. All right, sir. Well, thanks for the call.
Okay, have a nice day.
You too. Good luck tomorrow. I love when we get fans from different teams on here. I love it. Just talked to an NC State fan. Before that, who else did we have? We've got a couple Wake Forest fans that call. McD, of course, Maryland fan. I love Michael, Purdue fan. I love talking to. Nothing against you Ohio State fans, you Michigan fans, you Clemson fans, you Alabama fans, etc. But I got to say, I do find it enjoyable to talk to fans of other fan bases. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
This is LSU Dream Team. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm good. What's going on?
So I know you got a lot of Oklahoma fans in the chat, but so you already know LSU, they're trying to get a new head coach, right? Like
Yes.
We're trying to get a new coach coming in. And so I think if Lincoln Riley did come to LSU, I think that would be a boost for the Tiger fans because we don't have an offense. And I think LSU needs to bring in like someone like that guy, for example.
Oh, that would be a great hire. Yes, Lincoln Riley. I can't imagine any LSU fan not wanting Lincoln Riley.
Yeah. So I think like the thing about LSU is like they're trying to pay him a contract, which this is the Oklahoma fans back and forth about, But I think it depends on what happens tomorrow with the Oklahoma and Oklahoma State game, and I think Oklahoma State's going to win tomorrow, and I feel like LSU needs to get that. Like they need to get. Well, we've been hearing that LSU trying to get Dave Aranda, Billy Napier, but I don't think Dave Aranda is the guy we need to go for.
If I were LSU, I would want my next head coach to have more of a track record than either Dave Aranda or, of course, Mel Tucker was the guy that people were talking about weeks ago. Not that they're not tremendous coaches and may turn out to be top flight coaches, but to be safer at a school like that, I would like to hire a coach with a better track record or a longer track record.
Like a Lincoln Riley.
Yeah.
For example. Well, see, and LSU fans the thing about Lincoln Riley is he's somebody he's 55-9 as his record at Oklahoma. And he makes it to the playoff games, but people don't understand that when Oklahoma gets in the playoffs, they go up against like a SEC high power, SEC team, high caliber team. Like we've already seen what in 2019 LSU did to Oklahoma. And I think if Lincoln Riley would have come to somewhere like LSU, for example, I think he can recruit really well. He can have LSU's got the defense. The offensive wise, I think he can bring in a 5-star talent QB coming in. I think that Lincoln Riley at LSU would be really good for this. I think that'd be a dynasty right there, if you want to be honest.
Anybody should be able to recruit defensive players at LSU. And the Oklahoma defense has been upgraded substantially, but most of that's been somewhat based on recruiting, but it's more been about Alex Grinch and bringing him in from Washington State via Ohio State to where LSU, the caliber of defensive player and the waves of defensive players that you can get at LSU versus Oklahoma is substantially different. And I don't know if that's going to change when Oklahoma joins the SEC because Oklahoma has to venture outside of the state. It's not a great football playing state. It's a good football playing state where Louisiana as you know, is a phenomenal football playing state, and per capita produces as many NFL players as any state in the nation. It's just not a well-populated state, but you just have a recruiting advantage at LSU that you don't have at Oklahoma.
And see, like, I'm not trying to call in and try and get all the Oklahoma fans mad. I'm just saying, like, as a true fan of the team, if I was Lincoln Riley and I want to win a championship, and I mean, he can win a championship at Oklahoma, but if we're being real, it's going to have to take some time because Oklahoma is about to come into the SEC before we know it. And, you know, we got these teams like Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Florida, teams like that already have way too much experience. And see, Oklahoma, they haven't beat an SEC team since, last year when they beat Florida in the Cotton Bowl. And, like, I just don't think that if Riley stays at Oklahoma, it would take him like 3 years at least to compete against teams like Bama and Georgia. And I think if he comes to LSU, he has a better chance at competing on the high level, if that makes a lot of sense.
It makes sense, although who's got a better football team right now? You'd have to say Oklahoma does.
Sure.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a better argument had Oklahoma stayed in the Big 12, because even though there are some recruiting advantages at LSU versus Oklahoma that we just laid out, getting to a college football playoff is much easier at Oklahoma in the Big 12, as has been proven in the last 6 or 7 years, than it is at LSU. But that's going to be changed here, whether that's 2023, 24, 25, whenever it is. And so Oklahoma's going to have to deal with the SEC. Now, their recruiting prowess may even pick up a little bit more, much like Texas A&M's did, because they'll be able to sell playing in the SEC. I think the argument between what's a better job, LSU and Oklahoma, is a really good one. I don't think it's a clear-cut argument. I could make a clear-cut argument for either side.
Sure. What I think the argument is here is, for one, the money, because LSU's trying to offer him a lot of money, which I know if you're a coach, you're going to want to get paid a lot, for one. Two, I think another reason why is because if we look at all three of the last coaches at LSU, they've all won national championships. We got Nick Saban, he won a championship, Les Miles, and Ed Orgeron, which Ed Orgeron and Les Miles weren't the best candidate coaches, but they still won national championships. But if you took Lincoln Riley, an offensive-minded guy who made 2 quarterbacks win Heisman, you can make a better case saying, well, he can come in and win like 2 national championships or something at LSU. And I know Oklahoma fans don't like me saying this, but you can't argue that. Like, if you're getting paid $12 million a year, I mean, I don't know if the contract is real or not, but if you're getting paid $12 million, then I don't see how you would decline like that offer, if that makes sense.
Well, when you talk about who should be taking what offers, that all depends on that particular person. Everybody's got their own priorities on what's important to them. If we're just talking about strictly money, right now, I just looked it up. Lincoln Riley's making $7.6 million a year, which is 5th in the country. Now, maybe Oklahoma would be willing to pay him more. Like you say, the numbers we're hearing reported are $12 million a year. But I would say that experience has told me that usually the numbers that are first reported and thrown around are typically inflated, and almost never are the actual numbers that it turns out to be the numbers that were first reported. People like to inflate the numbers and throw out crazy numbers to gain viewers. So I don't know if Oklahoma's able or prepared or willing to match an LSU offer. I don't know. Or that's beyond them, or they just don't want to pay it. So that's, of course, one consideration. Most people take it, just anybody that's listening to our conversation right now, think about how you've responded to job offers and job opportunities. What do you usually do? You take the job that pays the more money.
Right. And Scott Woodward, the LSU guy. Well, see, people, like, if you remember when he was at Texas A&M, I'm pretty sure we all remember this story where Jimbo Fisher and many people thought he wasn't going to leave to go to Texas A&M when he was at Florida State. And look what happened. And I think that a lot of people got to realize that this, I mean, a lot of people are going to say Lincoln Riley ain't going to come to LSU. He may not. I mean, I'll be reasonable. It's a 50-50, but I mean, if he did leave to go to LSU, it's still not a bad opportunity because you're going to an SEC school. You get, depending on the money, I don't really keep up with the money, but
he's going to be at an SEC school. He's already, in a sense, at an SEC school. We don't know that when that's going to be exactly, but if he plans on staying in the college game, he's already at an SEC school.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm saying, like, he, you know what I'm saying. Like, he would come to an SEC team that's been in the SEC for a while. You know what I'm saying.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but that's going to be in the past.
Sure.
All right. Well, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. You have a good night.
No problem. Thank you for taking the time. You too, man.
Lincoln Riley to LSU. When that rumor popped up maybe a week or so ago, he posted some videos. I really didn't think that it was, I don't know. I just thought people were talking, but it seems to have some steam. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Oh, am I on the line?
Hello?
Hi.
Hey, how you doing? Who am I talking to?
Oh, pretty good. This is Christopher Mays. It's good to finally talk to you, Mark.
Hey, Chris. I appreciate you calling.
I was just wondering. I was thinking about this while I was listening to your other callers. Can you think of a team in the country right now that could actually compete with Ohio State in a cover zero defense? I mean, straight up, right on the line, man to man. Honestly, I can't think of a team. Maybe Georgia, maybe Iowa. I mean, I was just thinking back to the older Michigan teams from the last few years with Don Brown's defense where he just played, cover zero, cover zero, cover zero.
Yeah.
I hope Michigan doesn't do that for their sake, but do you think there is a team that could do that this year? Honestly.
Well, it would be the teams that have the best defensive back personnel. And
sure.
And beyond that, it's actually the teams that have the better pass rush because obviously you're limiting the time in which the quarterback has time to throw the ball downfield, play after play after play. I think Michigan's better equipped because I just can't imagine that they're going to play one look. So I think they're prepared from watching them play most of their games this year, and then probably the way they've been preparing for Ohio State, that they're going to make C.J. Stroud think a little bit. So I think the other portion of this is that it'll be interesting to see if Ryan Day has noticed the issues that Michigan had against Michigan State, and they didn't even correct them the next week. I'm trying to think who they played the next week. Anyway, whoever they played the next week, Indiana, I believe, they didn't completely correct their issues of changing out personnel. So anytime Ohio State goes from a long yardage situation to a short yardage or vice versa, Michigan will want to change out personnel. So if Ohio State can keep the same personnel on the field, I want to see if Michigan has fixed that problem.
That's a good point, honestly. I never think about the fact that these offenses, if they keep the same personnel on the field and go and keep going, and the defense can't switch out. I forgot about that. That's a good point. I was thinking too, Michigan might try some. If I was Michigan, I'd try some stunts, something to keep Ohio State honest, kind of knock them off balance a little bit, force some turnovers, keep them from, getting these big home run plays that they got against Michigan State, Purdue. I think if Michigan keeps it close by halftime, I would think Michigan's got to have confidence enough to think, you know what, we can do this. We can do this. Because I know it's going to sound crazy, and I don't mean to knock Michigan fans. As a program, I don't believe Michigan believes they can win anymore hardly. I think this year I think they might believe it, but I think the last few years, I don't think they believe they could win. Just the whole losing, I think, has just really messed with their psyche just as a program, in my opinion, anyway.
I think there's something to that. We're not there to know for sure, but I think that's reasonable to think, and I can somewhat draw that conclusion. And I think that we saw it after the Penn State game, that they were ecstatic. They were relieved. I never saw Jim Harbaugh respond to a win like that. He seemed happier than I've seen him in years after a game.
Honestly, I thought after Michigan played Wisconsin, like, boy, this team's different. This is an interesting team. And I thought to myself, I think at the end of the year, it's going to be a very interesting game. And if Michigan might win, I do think they're going to need some help. I think they'll have to force some turnovers and obviously get some sacks and force TJ Threaten to making his mistakes. But I think Michigan's got a chance. I'm an Ohio State fan like you are. So, of course, I hope they don't win. But, I mean, just as unbiased as I can be, I think Michigan has definitely got a chance. Maybe not as big of a chance as they'd like, but I definitely think they've got a chance. Not just a puncher's chance.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're in the 30-35% range. That's the kind of chance I would give them. The interesting thing about what they're going to do defensively, that we'll never know. You got to be there at the practices, but the thing that has to be weighing on a defensive coordinator like Mike Macdonald is you have to look at your team and your personnel and figure out what you do well and start there. And then you have to look at the opponent and see what they do well and how that matches up. And then you go from there. And then you start to figure out, okay, if I try to change up to counter what they do well, are my players going to be able to execute? You can't throw too much at them, but you have to throw something at them to obviously give the Ohio State offense something to think about and give them some different looks. But you can't over scheme, or you're going to confuse your own players and give them too much and not allow them just to play the defense that they're accustomed to playing. So it's an interesting chess match with just even before we get on the field and they have to start to counter each other just in regards to preparing the team and trying to figure out, okay, how much do we change this week? We need to stay with what we do well, but at the same time, we need to break tendencies to give them something to think about and to break tendencies to surprise them, both on offense and defense. But, I was watching Iowa today, and they were moving the ball, running straight handoffs off tackle and play action passes. And in the middle of drives, they were running like double reverses and fumbling the ball and losing yardage. And I'm like, why are you doing that? But yeah,
I'm glad you said that, because that makes me think of not last year, but the year before last. It was the first play from scrimmage for Michigan, right? And they got I want to say they got 6 or 7 yards, their first play from scrimmage, 2nd and 3. Great. I thought to myself, boy, they're moving the ball. I bet they're going to run again. They didn't run. They decided to go back for a pass, even though they did great on that first play. They went back for a pass. Ohio State sacked them. And in my opinion, Michigan's tail was they seemed like their goose was cooked from then on. The whole rest of the game, it just set the pace. And like you were saying, why wouldn't you go with what you know? And they were a great running team, or not great, I should say, but they were a solid running team in 2019, I thought. And they decided, well, we're going to keep, trying to throw the ball against a team that we shouldn't be throwing the ball against, because they had success on the ground, but they kept just airing it out. I just don't understand that. But I did want to ask you one more question before we part ways. Do you think this year, because I remember Steve Dace mentioned this last year, I think, where Michigan scripts their plays a lot. And I know a lot of teams do that. Their first, 13, 14 plays of the game, they script. Do you think Jim Harbaugh will do that this year? Because in my opinion, like for me, if I was calling it, if say like that year, if I got a good play on the ground to open up the game, even if my next play was a pass or something, I'd be like, you know what? Let's run it again. Let's try to get that first down. Let's try to move the ball to the field however we're having success with. To heck with the script. If what we're doing now is working, let's keep going. Let's audible out that play or that script and do what's working for us. I mean, do you think he scripted the plays this game?
I
should say Josh got it.
I believe Bill Walsh was the first. I believe he was the inventor of scripting the first 15 plays of a football game. And I got to think that the reason you do that is your team learns those plays so well, practices them so well, that you get off to a great start and build a lot of confidence. And 15 plays should get you through basically 2 drives. And you run those plays so much, and the players anticipate exactly what's coming, and they know what's coming, and it just repetition breeds success. So, and then once you build that confidence off that success, then it bodes well for the rest of the game. I would tend to do
I understand that.
I would tend to do a combination of those two things. So I would even let my team know that we're scripting the first 15 plays, but just like the rest of the game, when you don't know until the play comes in what we're running, you're going to have to be prepared, because if we've got a 2nd and 1 or a 3rd and 1 or certainly a 4th and 1, and the play call is too risky for a 4th and 1 play, we're going to run off of script. So you can expect we're probably going to run these 15 plays, but we may have to alter a few of those plays based on game situation.
Sure, I understand. And that's a good point. I didn't think about the fact that the players would prepare for that. I know when I played football, I played only in high school. I don't remember us scripting the plays, but that might just be more of a new age thing anyway. But that makes a lot of sense, making sure that just repetition, that makes a lot of sense. Keep them honest. But thanks for the call, Mark. I really appreciate it, and have a good night. And everybody in the chat, it's good to see you all here again.
Well, we enjoy the phone
have
call.
A good night, Mark.
Appreciate it. Enjoy the game tomorrow. All right, let's keep it going. Here, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Mark?
Yeah.
I promise this call is only going to be about 60 seconds. This is Corey Bratta.
Hey.
I wanted to give you a quick call.
Yes.
I wanted to know what it felt like to be on the other end of this.
Okay.
And I wanted to know what it felt like to wait on hold forever. So I appreciate this experience. And I wanted to ask you a question as a fan here. All right. I was on the ESPN app, and the headline on ESPN right now, Tebow says he doesn't think Harbaugh will be fired if Michigan loses. That's the headline right now on the homepage of the ESPN app. Now, did I go to sleep and wake up 20 years later, or is there actual rumblings that Harbaugh could be fired if Michigan loses this game tomorrow? Is there any chance Michigan fires a 10-2 coach who's one game away from the playoffs?
I think I've learned in posting videos and trying to find what people are interested in is that Jim Harbaugh moves the needle, and it is the night before arguably the most important game of the season in the country, in the Big Ten. And number 3, Tim Tebow. He moves a needle too. And otherwise, I don't think there's anything valid to that statement. Nothing. I've not heard anything. And Michigan has come near the completion of a 10-1 season in which they're playing an enormous game. And even if they lose the game in horrible fashion, I cannot imagine that Jim Harbaugh is on the hot seat and that's under consideration.
Well, I'm just trying to piece together how it's even feasible that a coach from the same conference who just went 3-9 has basically gotten the attaboy from his AD, and yet Jim Harbaugh is about to go 10-2 at worst, and we're talking about potential firing. So, anyways, I don't want to keep your line tied up, Mark. I just wanted to, like I said, see what it felt like to wait on hold, and I also kind of wanted to take up a line because I know George is probably going to be calling in here pretty soon, so I figured I'd delay that for you, Mark.
Yeah, delay
and
George.
I know the last time
that sometimes can be a good thing.
Our show. We were doing our show last time, and I think George got kind of PO'd because we were on forever. So I figure I'd take the spotlight away from him for a few more minutes.
It is funny that until you identified yourself, I didn't know it was you. I didn't recognize your voice.
So I could have just went for about 15, 20 minutes like our callers do. we had somebody on the show today, Mark, that said they were frustrated with how long the callers were taking to get through their questions.
Well, that
we consistently have people who say, "Okay, my 5th question is, my 6th question is."
well, I've determined that that's something that I will never please my audience across the board on, because I get pats on the back for allowing people to talk and for conversations to breathe and allow it, and not taking the Paul Feinbaum approach that people call in and say, break down the Alabama-Georgia game, and he says, yeah, it should be a really good one. They're both loaded with talent. Click on to the next caller. So I let callers have their say. And so there are both complaints about that, but a lot of people pat me on the back. So it's a little bit of both there. So I'm trying to move it along a little quicker than I have in the past.
I understand. And the last thing I was going to bring out is the first year hosting your Iowa channel and of course, the Iowa post game. And if I've learned anything, it's of all 12 games, the 2 fan bases, and I expected one of them, but the other one I was a bit surprised by, and perhaps it's because of the magnitude of that game, but the 2 fan bases that really got hostile with us on the post game. Can you guess what the 2 fan bases were, Mark? Okay,
I'm going to guess. One was a surprise. I am going to guess. I'm going to guess Nebraska, and I'm going to guess Penn State.
Yeah, you got it. Nebraska. We had people. I had to put like 3 or 4 people in a timeout today. I've never ever had to do that. And in the Penn State thing, I mean, obviously the magnitude of that game and the fake injury stuff, that made a little bit more sense. But anyway, so I'm kind of calling in to troll Nebraska fans. I know I try to be down the middle and unbiased as I can, but figured you got a few of them on this evening, so figured I'd needle them a bit.
Well, I think there's a few other factors that weigh into that. I think that Nebraska fans are obviously frustrated beyond belief, regardless of who they would have played today. Just another game against a good team, which they came this close. And this has to be the most excruciating of all of them, because they never blew a lead in the other ones. And just to blow that enormous lead. But also, I've got to think, and I'm conjecturing here, that the typical Nebraska fan sees themselves at a certain level, sees Iowa at a lower level, and it just grates on them that Iowa now has beaten them 7 consecutive years, and that they're looking up at Iowa, not just in head-to-head comparisons, but Iowa's just a flat-out much better program right now.
Yeah, it's kind of like Iowa. I mean, I've been seeing debates all week on Twitter about Iowa State and how, I mean, I don't know how you can even have a discussion about just looking back on the season between Iowa and Iowa State. You're 7-5. You know, you lost the head-to-head by double digits, and yet they're still at home, and yet there's still Iowa State fans who are just pissed off. So it's part of the rivalry. I get it. There's not much of a rivalry anymore between Iowa and Nebraska. But anyways, all right, Mark. Appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you Tuesday afternoon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Corey. Have a good night. Enjoy the football tomorrow.
All right, take care.
That was our guy, Corey Brada, from the Hawkeye of the Storm. If you love Iowa athletics, both football and basketball, head on over to From the Hawkeye of the Storm. And also, Corey anchors our Iowa coverage here at the Voice of College Football on the Iowa channel. Wrapped up postgame with Coach Don Patterson this afternoon after the Iowa win over Nebraska. So Corey does an outstanding job. And if you just want to help us build out the platform here at the Voice of College Football and our series of channels, the priority right now is to get that Iowa channel to 1,000 subscribers. So I want to thank everyone who has just simply subscribed to the Iowa channel, both the Iowa fans, because there's good reason to subscribe there to get the great content that we provide there. Thanks most notably to Corey, but also to many of you who just subscribed because I've asked you to, and even if you don't root for Iowa, you've helped us grow the channel there. So we appreciate that. So subscribe to the Iowa channel, help us build the network. All right, on to our next caller here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Anthony.
Anthony. How you doing tonight?
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Just fine. Just want to say great work on the game coverage. I think you guys did a great job this week. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Glad you enjoyed it.
Obviously, yeah, thank you. It was it gets a little long-winded sometimes with the local guys, but I think you did a great job. But, I just want to talk quick about the game and maybe a little bit about Ohio State recruiting. But, I think the game comes down to, I realize Michigan's better than they've been in a long time. And, maybe not a long time, but they're having a more positive outcome this season, new attitude. But I think that this is broken down and it's simple. You know how it is. It comes down, if you go through the coaching staff, everybody knows Ryan Day is going to eat Mike McDonald's lunch. He's going to. Ryan Day is a tremendous play caller. So, that's going to be a clear win for us. But I think it goes down to, recruiting. If you look at, I was reading the stats the other day, Ohio State is going to roll out 12 or 13 5-stars against Michigan, I think 2 or 1 5-stars. And even recruiting this year in 2020, for 2022, Michigan's got 18th ranked class, no 5-stars, 1 4-star, and 13 or 14 3-stars. Ohio State, 2 5-stars, 2 more 5-stars basically have been crystal ball to us, and all the rest are 4-stars. So I just think that the talent, I know this whole thing with, the number of guys getting drafted in NFL, but you're an NFL guy too. You know that talent in NFL and development, they look for different things in college. So, saying 1 Michigan player, 1 Ohio State player, I think comes down to this game is going to be the same way it has been for a long time, because Ohio State has the horses. I think it's that simple. I know there's a lot of nuances to it, but don't you agree? Ohio State just has the horses.
So this is where I agree, and this is where I'm going to not necessarily disagree, but just bring a different look at it. So what you're saying is not just, and people need to look at the entire roster and not just look at a particular recruiting ranking and think, okay, Ohio State is stacking top 3 classes on top of each other, and Michigan is stacking top 10 to 15 classes on top of each other. So that's just not isolated to 1 year. You have to multiply that out 4 or 5 times in building roster. So that becomes significant. And I think it's even significant between for one particular year. I think it's been shown that the top 3 or 4 or 5 classes are comparable, and then there's a drop off, and the next 10 or 12 are comparable. And then there's really not a whole lot of separation between roughly the low teens and 40. And so that's what you're pointing to right there, that Ohio State has more game-changing impact, explosive players on both sides of the ball. And when you talk the NFL draft, you bring up a great point, because the NFL draft of 2020 is a great example. So I had a number of people comment that Michigan had 10 players drafted and Ohio State had 10 players drafted. Well, it's one thing to be drafted into the NFL, and that certainly speaks to a player's ability and their potential. But it's one thing to be drafted in the 5th or 6th round, as all of those Michigan players were. All 10 were drafted in the 5th or 6th round or 7th round. And all the Ohio State players, almost all of them were drafted in the first 3 to 4 rounds. And obviously that was the draft in which Ohio State had 4 first-rounders and 2 of the top 3 picks in the draft, Chase Young and Jeff Okudah. So the difference was substantial, even though it was 10 to 10. So I agree with all that. Absolutely. I do think that there are nuances to that. We see Texas piling up top 10 classes, and we see Wisconsin bringing in top 30 or 35 classes, and there's no comparison between the football teams. So there are certainly elements of development and preparation and scheming, and meaning scheming prior to the game, and then also in-game adjustments that play into that, because we're going to see, meaning Ohio State, a team in the Big Ten championship game in either Wisconsin or Iowa that routinely plays above its recruiting ranking and will go play some SEC team in a bowl game and compete very well against a team that's going to be a top 10 or 15 recruited roster versus their top 40 class after class after class. So I'm generally on board with everything you stated, but I do think that there are other considerations to be made.
Yeah. I mean, that's why they play the game. I just think that, I don't know. I mean, if you look at it too, I mean, even on Michigan's defense or vaunted defense, there's what you figure Daxton Hill, he would start at Ohio State for sure. David Ojabo was a one-trick pony. I've watched tons of tape on this guy, and he's a speed rusher, and that can be dealt with. I mean, there's ways to deal with the speed rusher. Now, Aiden Hutchinson, Ohio State's line is stacked with 5 stars. He would definitely be in the mix. But you got, even comparing, Ohio State's defense, and Ohio State's defense, if you look at if you take out those, Kerry Combs numbers, they stack up basically pound for pound every well is good with, of course you can't do that for sure. But I mean, there's the Matt Barnes change has done amazing things for Ohio State's defense. And I just think that, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a good game, but I just think that, Ohio State is just too deep, got too much talent, and they got Ryan Day, who's, kind of a game changer. And honestly, I mean, as far as going forward, I mean, I heard the guy talking about, Harbaugh being fired. I mean, that's crazy. I don't think he should be fired. I agree with that. But I tell you something right now, Penn State's bringing in a great class. They got a quarterback in Drew Aller. I think he's better than J.J. McCarthy. He may be better than Quinn Ewers. So if anything, Ohio State needs to watch out. It's kind of, everybody's, worried about Russia, but China's the bad person. Well, I think everybody's worried about around here about Michigan, but I think Penn State's going to be, maybe the second dog in this division, because they're going to have a quarterback that can bring. I saw a kid play in high school. He's all that. So I mean, I just don't think it's going to be that big of a game this year. I think it's going to be the same thing. I mean, maybe they keep it close, but I think Ohio State comes out at third quarter and starts cracking off big play after big play. And I just think that, they just can't compete with that. I mean, they're a solid offense, but, they just don't have the playmakers.
Well, here's also the statistical anomaly of what's going on with Ohio State and Michigan. Let's consider Ryan Day to be an extension of the Urban Meyer era. So if you take Ohio State and its results against the Big Ten since 2012, I think Ohio State's lost 9 games against the Big Ten, none to Michigan. And Penn State's probably been the best team, certainly since 2016, but very close with Michigan. And Penn State has competed against Ohio State and competed well, only won 1 game, but competes each year. And Michigan's been a bit sporadic and, of course, blown out the last 2 games. But it's just an outlier or a statistical anomaly that Michigan, being arguably the second most talented team in the conference, continues to lose when Iowa can jump out and win a game. Purdue can jump out and win a game. Michigan State can win multiple games. And whomever else, we can go through the games that Ohio State's lost in the Big Ten since 2012. So maybe that's just Ohio State playing at its maximum and being laser focused for Michigan. Maybe there being a psychological advantage that's built up through the years, especially after 2016. That was a landmark game. In 2018, a landmark game. So there are a lot of factors involved in the dominance.
Yeah. Well, you know, the other last thing I want to talk about, I'll let you get back to the other caller, but I want to get your take on it. I mean, I think the games that come down to Michigan, the hope that Michigan has is, to me, I mean, again, I'm a layman by a long shot, but, and it seems like, this whole, David Jabo and basically, those guys playing in the backfield basically all day, and just being, like turning into Chase Young and Joey Bosa for a game and playing in the backfield, which, it can happen. I mean, they didn't get any sacks against a terrible Maryland team last week, but, and they've been, their production's dropping off because I think, usage, because they're playing all the defensive snaps, but, be that here or there. But I just, I guess, my thought is, Mumford will hold up against, can hold up against either one of those guys, but I worry about DeJuan Jones. I mean, DeJuan Jones, a first-year starter. He's a massive guy. He got a first quick step, but that's the one that worries me. And I don't know. I'm hoping Ryan Day will be able to. Like, he schemed around with the Karstophis, the Greek terror, whatever they called him from Purdue. They pretty much they schemed around that guy and just confused him all day. And if they can protect Paris, or DeJuan Jones that way. But you think that our tackles will hold up against there's 2 bookends, or you see that you think maybe they can kind of wreck this game?
I don't think they're going to wreck the game. I don't think they can consistently wreck the game. I don't think we can see anything close to what we saw. The biggest example of somebody in a defensive line wrecking a game among quality teams that I've seen this year is the Georgia-Clemson game, where basically Clemson couldn't run its offense. I can't foresee anything close to that happening. I could see them on occasion making a play, and when they make a play, it needs to be a big play. There's going to be a difference between them getting close to Stroud and causing him just to throw it away on 2nd and 7 versus them getting close and knocking the ball out of his hand and getting a strip sack. And sometimes the difference between those two things is just an eyelash. Sometimes it's pure luck. So when they get there, when they get close, they need to make big plays. I think, in addition to that, I think the formula is Hassan Haskins beating on that defense 30 times, and the game gets sized down considerably. The number of possessions, the number of times that Ohio State has the opportunity to get on the field offensively can be impacted greatly by Hassan Haskins and the offensive line of Michigan.
So you don't think Josh Gaddis is going to pull a Jim Tressel circa 2006 and put Beanie Walls on the sidelines and go 5 wide?
Well, that worked for Jim Tressel.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Well, I appreciate the call.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, enjoy the
Thanks
game.
so much. Like I said, enjoy your work. Keep it up.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Let me get to these super chats. I appreciate everybody contributing. So let's knock out these super chats right now. We got One Scoop John who called. Thanks for having me on. And here's to an epic rivalry weekend. Go Blue. Please keep in mind that the words "Go Blue" in that order have never left my mouth before I started this show. So I simply read the super chats and thank everyone for your contribution. So that came from One Scoop John. Appreciate all the Michigan fans that put up with me. I think that's phenomenal. You wouldn't want to be in the same living room with me watching the game tomorrow, but we can get along 364 days a year. We got Jared the actor. Jared the actor. I love that handle. Jared the actor. That's very, there's something, there's a mystique about that. Jared the actor. Thank you so much for the contribution. Jared had absolutely nothing to say. Maybe he's a silent film actor. But I appreciate the contribution. Thank you so much for that. We've got a few others that came in. Don't want to miss these. So bear with me. And again, I hope you caught my predictions on Patreon today. 4-1 against the spread. Could kick myself for not taking Arkansas because I did think that they would handle Mizzou, but I just kind of figured Mizzou would get a back score touchdown to get it close. Where are those other super chats? Come on. Oh. There's one coming in. Appreciate that from Justin Burr. We hear from Justin on a regular basis. Justin, we appreciate you being here as always. Michigan, Ohio State will be a good game this year. OH. Buckeye fans can fill in the blank there. When the OH chant first came out, and I don't know when that was, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's been relatively, it's not like 100-year-old tradition, I don't think. I didn't really buy into it. I had all sorts of people. OH. It's like, yeah, I don't really do that. Now, if I was in an airport and I had an Ohio State shirt on, I wouldn't be an ass. And to anybody in the airport that was like, OH, I'd give them an IO. But like people at work, so forth, OH, and I'd be like, yeah. Addison's here with the super sticker. I'm still intrigued by the super sticker concept. You must not be able to write a message on the super sticker. I don't know, but Addison's an Ole Miss fan. The Rebels, congratulations to you winning the Egg Bowl. That's a big, big deal, and we honor and celebrate the Rebels win with the Ole Miss helmet behind me. And few of you know, because there is much discussion about the helmets back here. Some of you are fascinated with the helmets, and I appreciate that. I say that not in a condescending way. I just find it interesting that some people are intrigued by and care which helmets are on which shelf. And when you've got there's about 15 here, so there's only about 6 or 7 that you can see. There are several helmets, i.e. Clemson right now. You can't see it, so it's sitting right there. But the only full-sized helmet I have, you would think would be maybe somebody else. But the only full-sized helmet I have is Ole Miss. It's the only full-sized helmet. So we're going to honor the Rebs now that I've got it in my hand with the Egg Bowl victory. Now, the reason I have an Ole Miss full-size helmet is that when I worked at the Worldwide Leader, you've probably seen where there are helmets displayed on the various sets of College Football Live or Sports Center or whatever, different shows where there are full-size helmets. So Just outside the studios at ESPN, there are cages where our production staff would be able to get into the cages. If the producer said, we're talking about Tennessee, Ole Miss, Wisconsin, and Kansas State, go get those helmets. And they would constantly get in new helmets to keep up with the new decor and the new style helmets. And so basically in the offices where I worked, because I worked in production, we had access to helmets that they would get rid of. And I'm not a memorabilia kind of collector guy. So I turned down, I don't know how many helmets. Like, yeah, I don't care to have that helmet. Give it to somebody else. I wish I hadn't now, because I would have probably 10 of these. But anyway, but if you walked around the offices at ESPN on the production side, you would see these helmets. You know, you'd see an LSU helmet and a Tennessee helmet over here. And many of them were just random. People just wanted to have a helmet, and they didn't necessarily root for that team, but most of them had a connection and were like, okay, the next LSU helmet, let's get that to so-and-so because they're an LSU fan. But for me, it was just once I started doing this, I thought, okay, the next helmet, I get an opportunity, regardless of who it is, I'm just going to take it. And so that was the next one that was available. And they said, Mark, you want an Ole Miss helmet? I said, sure, I will take the Ole Miss helmet. So that's why that is the one. I believe it's seems like a fully operational Schutt helmet, large, certified Vengeance DCT helmet. Also reminds me that I have my 5, 10, and 15-year awards from ESPN/Disney, but you can't see those either. And I was only about, wow, that's funny to think about. In just about a week or two, I would have hit my 20 years at ESPN and would have received whatever they give away. It's some kind of trophy, some kind of statue. I don't know what they give away for 20 years. I don't remember what it is. All right. I got my Mickey for 15 years. It's here somewhere. All right. Let me catch up to these other super chats. We got Christ Savior 888. Thank you so much. It's always great to see your super chats, as it is everybody's super chats. Christ Savior 888. Every knee will bow. Jesus is Lord. God bless you all. Enjoy the glorious day of football tomorrow. Christ Savior 888, bringing a little biblical verbiage into the football tomorrow. Glorious day of football. Mark, have you heard anything about weather in Ann Arbor tomorrow? Wind or rain? So I appreciate so much. You already know this, Christ Savior 888, that I appreciate your super chat. I must admit, I've said this a few times, I get just slightly amused/annoyed, depending on my mood, by the what I would call a Google question. You know, who won the 1982 Rose Bowl? Well, I know that Iowa and Washington played in the 1982 Rose Bowl and it was 28-0, but can't you just Google that? Why are you asking me? So yes, weather.com. I would trust them more than I would trust me on any weather. My one weather story from Ohio State, Michigan, I do remember the 1982 game. Tons of rain in Columbus, puddles all over the field, guys sliding all over the field, 24-14 Buckeyes. The 1981 game, I remember waking up, and this was at the infancy of my predictions. I'd been predicting college and NFL games for just a couple years. I was just a lad there at the time of 1981, and the Buckeyes were a 10-point underdog in Ann Arbor, and it was a brutally cold day, like 16 degrees outside, snow plowed off the field. I remember looking outside thinking, it feels like 13-9. This is a 13-9 kind of day. And Ohio State won 14-9. I appreciate the super chat coming in from Addison again here. Mark, what do you think about Saban ranting on fan noise? Wow, this got a lot of attention. I probably should have posted a video on this. People were asking me about this last night. And the only reason I saw this, there's a ton of stuff that you guys see that I don't see. I'm sitting here recording constantly. And so when I jump on YouTube, I'm not watching football. I'm not watching college football. If I am, I'm actually watching college football, or I'm watching like a Super Bowl from 1974. That's the stuff. I'm watching music videos of a certain kind, or I'm watching, when I get into the right habit, I'll be listening to some inspirational messages / preaching, maybe early in the morning when I wake up typically. But old football games and things like that. But I'm not watching like 247 Sports. And so you guys pick up on these things more frequently than I do. So that said, the only reason I ran across the Saban rant was I was on Twitter and somebody posted it. And this makes me believe I need to do a much better job of clickbait. And I mean clickbait in a good way, not a underhanded way, but in a way that's going to draw. I need to take more care in the titles that I put on videos and on my tweets, because somebody reeled me in, because otherwise I'm just Nick Saban, who's kind of, he's had something to say, who cares? Keep going. But I was intrigued and I watched it. So I commented in much the same way last night. I have no issue with anything that he said. I think that everything that he said is on point. These guys are criticized too much. There is too high of a standard, not necessarily too high of a standard, but too low of a, or just not a threshold of just patience and understanding that these other teams have talent. They work hard too. They have capable coaches. They prepare. They have scholarship athletes. It's not, you just don't roll out there, regardless of how many 5-stars you have, and win every game by 50 points. And so there has to be an appreciation for every win. I think that can be balanced by saying, okay, Alabama's supposed to be the best team in the country, and LSU's like 40th. Why'd they only win by 1 score? What went wrong? So there's a balance there. Not that everything, okay, we won the game, there's no room to criticize or evaluate. But I do get his point that he probably just gets sick of hearing the negative that you're not winning by enough, basically. And what are you going to do about Georgia? At the same time, what might have gotten under his skin is the knowledge or the thought that this team is not ready for Georgia and is not going to be prepared. Now, he'll prepare them, but that it's going to be difficult for him to get them ready for that team. That might have agitated him a bit. The only thing that I wish he would have put a disclaimer on, and he knows this to be true, he was making it out like everybody criticizes and nobody appreciates these athletes and everybody expects too much and nobody understands that they go to study hall and they get up early in the morning and they do football and homework all day and nobody understands this. I wish he would have just qualified that to say, I appreciate everyone out there who understands that we work our tails off and these kids work their tails off and they go to class and they do the right things generally and X, Y, and Z. We know that most of you realize this, but there are people out there, and then he could have gone on with his rant. So it just seemed to be a little bit too generalize to everybody's like this. That's the only problem I had with it. I found it entertaining. Thank you for the super chat here coming in from Blesniak21. Do you think Michigan has a shot? I'm a huge Michigan fan, and I've been hearing all week how we're going to get crushed. Like I stated earlier, I put it at 30 to 35%. You get my predictions on Patreon, so I have to honor those folks. So, yes, Michigan has a shot. Again, this dominance by Ohio State is because of reality. Better teams, better coaching, better talent, better preparation, all those things. But there is part of it that's an anomaly. They've lost to Iowa since the last time they lost to Michigan. They've lost to Purdue. They've lost to Penn State. They've lost to fill in the blank, Michigan a few times since the last time they lost to Michigan. So basically, since Jim Harbaugh stepped on campus, Michigan has arguably been the second best team / program in the Big Ten. I would say probably third, maybe fourth, but Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin are all right there. It's hard to distinguish since 2015 between those three programs. Well, Ohio State's played Wisconsin a few times, and those games have been close, 27-21. Then the other one, they were down by 2 touchdowns at halftime in the Big Ten championship game. So they've played Wisconsin twice in the championship game since Jim Harbaugh got there, and they barely won in Madison in overtime in 2016. So they haven't blown out Wisconsin during that time. The Penn State game has been razor close twice. Down 2 scores, 5 minutes left in the game, close. And the other game's competitive. So there is a portion of this that is a statistical anomaly of why Ohio State has dominated Michigan to this degree. If you told me that Urban Meyer is going to be the coach at Ohio State and Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, and these are going to be the recruiting rankings and the results of all the other games, you could have given me the results of all the other games and said, fill in the blanks, Mark, in terms of who's going to win these games between Ohio State and Michigan from 2012. And then there's going to be this coach, Ryan Day, who's going to take over for Urban Meyer, and he's going to be just as good. And what are the scores going to be between Ohio State and Michigan from 2012 through 2019? And I had all this other data to look at, and I'd say, well, Ohio State's the better program. They're recruiting better. Look at the results. They're dominating the Big Ten, but Michigan's been good. Oh, and Ohio State lost to Iowa and Purdue and Michigan State a few times. Okay. I would have probably guessed that especially considering what the rivalry had been years ago, I would have guessed Michigan won twice. Probably. I would have said this is 5-2. Is that no? Urban was 7-0. Hang on, 2012 through 18. Yeah, Urban was 7-0. Ryan Day's 1-0. He's just won the one game. Okay, 8-0. I would have said, it's 6-2. That would have been the guess, because that's pretty much in line with the gap between the two programs. Not 8-0, and the last 2 have been 4-score games. Appreciate the super chat coming in here from Exploring with Ben. Quack, quack. Still a lot to play for this season. Absolutely. Let's not discount the conference championships. Let's not be hyper focused on the playoff. I know that's going to get most of the talk, and I get it. Yes, I want my team to play in the playoff. But conference championships, yes. I am going to watch the Pac-12 championship game. I am going to watch the ACC championship game. And depending on my time and my schedule, I will watch Now, some of the other ones I just can't watch because there are multiple games on it at the same time. But the Sun Belt, the MAC, and the Conference USA championships, the American Conference game could be an interesting one. It's certainly going to be important. Absolutely. All right, other super chats coming in. I don't want to miss these, and then I'll grab the next call. So we've got, thank you, Dave, for the super chat. Appreciate that. Why did Minnesota need Purdue to also beat Indiana to win the West if Nebraska beat Iowa and Minnesota beat Wisconsin? Okay. All right, let's see if I can explain this succinctly. We came into the weekend with Wisconsin and Iowa at 6-2, Minnesota and Purdue at 5-3. There were various results between those four teams. So, of course, if it ended up as a two-way tie, then it strictly goes head-to-head. Okay, if there's a three-way tie, then the first tiebreaker is who has won the most games between those three teams in their round-robin series. Meaning, if one of them beat the other two, and they're 2-0, like when I went through the various scenarios across the country, there was a situation, whether that was in the ACC or maybe in the event that Purdue, Wisconsin, and Iowa would have tied. Think about that. Wisconsin 2-0 against the other two. Purdue 1-1 against the other two. Iowa 0-2 against the other two. So Wisconsin wins that three-way tiebreaker. But then if that's just 1-1, 1-1, 1-1, then you default to division record. This is where Wisconsin has turned out to put themselves in a great place with the best division record. And it's one of the reasons why, if you check way back when Wisconsin lost to Notre Dame, I reminded people, shouldn't have had to, but this is a non-conference game. This is not affecting their Big Ten championship pursuit. And then even when they lost to Michigan and Penn State, I said, okay, that's not good because conference record is the first criteria, of course. But those are non-division games. They still have everybody in front of them. So once they beat Iowa, they just need somebody to beat Iowa. And actually, if Wisconsin beats Minnesota tomorrow, this division is played out exactly the way I predicted at the beginning of the season. Check out my results. I had Wisconsin and Iowa at 7-2, tied for first place, and Wisconsin winning head-to-head to win the division. Okay, the other one's a four-way tie, and it goes through the various tiebreakers. So I don't know if I explained that well. Let me see what else you had there. So Minnesota beats Wisconsin, then Minnesota 6-3, Wisconsin 6-3. So if Iowa, now that they won that game against Nebraska 6-3, that puts Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin all at 6-3. Since they all beat each other, Iowa over Minnesota, Minnesota over Wisconsin, Wisconsin over Iowa. That's all 1-1, 1-1, 1-1. Then it defaults to division record. Wisconsin wins. Minnesota needed Iowa out of the way to make it a two-way tie possibility to win the head-to-head against Wisconsin. Or they needed Purdue involved. And again, Minnesota beat both Wisconsin and Purdue, and they would win that round robin 2-0 versus Wisconsin and Purdue's 1-1 and 0-2. Follow me? Got that, Dave? Okay. Thanks for the question. Christ Savior 888. Thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate that so much. Mark with an exclamation mark, so I don't know how to say that properly. Mark, I guess like that. Here is a less fluffy, more focused, ungoogleable question. And no, I don't have my glasses on. There is no winter rain forecasted, but only 23 degrees. for a high. Does that have an effect on the passing game? Other disadvantages toward Ohio State's style? I would say yes. It's harder to catch a cold football that's like a brick. But these receivers do it well, and they wear gloves now, of course. I sound really old when I mention that they wear gloves. Of course they wear gloves, Mark. They've always worn. No, they haven't always. And the ball gets slick. So I will go outside and chuck the football around a few times a year. I used to do it a lot, but now in my older age, it just comes around a couple times a year. But yeah, if it's a nice 60 degrees out and you're throwing the football, you can squeeze it and it's got touch to it. But if it's 23 degrees, the football gets hard like a brick. It also gets slick. So that becomes, now again, they have equipped these players with gloves that are state of the art to help against that, and it doesn't affect them nearly as much as it used to. But it's not ideal. So it's a good question. And I believe I have hit all these super chats. I certainly hope I have not missed anyone's. All right. I need to make sure that I am servicing our fine sponsor, and we will get to that in just a second. But everybody, do me a favor and check out the banner below as we take our next call. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Mark, this is Zach from Columbus, Ohio. How are you?
I'm good, Zach. How are you doing?
Well, here we are.
Yeah.
We are. I'm not doing too bad. I'm excited. Here we are 11 hours away from the game, the rivalry, the greatest rivalry in all of collegiate sports. And I know there seems to be a bit of a biblical theme tonight. And one of the things that I'll touch on is, pride cometh before a fall. There's quite a few Ohio State fans out there who seem to think that this is going to be a 3-point, anywhere between, 18 points. I've seen a lot of people, 20-some point victory for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I think that might be hubris on their part. The teams that, and you've covered this in some of your shows, the teams that Ohio State have struggled with are able to get a rush on the quarterback with just 4 while being able to play defense and drop their corners back. And this Michigan team is built that way, with like the 2 best pass rushers in the Big Ten and arguably in the country with Hutchinson and Adabo. Another interesting stat is that C.J. Stroud, when not under pressure, is 70% in the pocket without pressure. While under pressure, he drops to 50%, which is a huge difference. And it can be, if they can disrupt his rhythm, it can be a huge difference maker throughout the game. And the forecast, the weather forecast that you just received is inaccurate. There's been a couple articles written pertaining to the weather 12 hours ago, but as the weather changes very constantly, but the weather right now is being predicted at noon in Ann Arbor, Michigan, snow showers. And those snow showers are going to continue all throughout the day for the entire game. So you're looking at snow showers throughout most of the game as it's being forecasted now. And I think that's also going to play a hand. Anytime you have cold and wet and precipitation, that doesn't bode well for normally offenses and quarterbacks and wide receivers. I know that can be mitigated to a degree with gloves, but still it doesn't bode well. I think I know you're a history of the sport and history, the history of the game. And going back to like the 1951, the most popular games between Ohio State and Michigan and in its history is the Snow Bowl of 1950, which, if snow is one of those omens for this game, I'm thinking back. I can't think of too many games. You got a few years on me, Mark, but I can't think of too many games in recent history where there's been a lot of snow in these Ohio State-Michigan games, at least not in the last 20 years.
I can't remember one game. Not since 81. That's the last one where there was snow, and it wasn't even really on the field because it was plowed. But where it was that cold, I'm trying to think. Cold weather, it's usually 45 degrees this time of year, roughly. Now, in Ann Arbor, of course, half the games are played in Columbus, and I bet the temperature is typically 6 to 10 degrees warmer in Columbus than Ann Arbor. I cannot remember cold weather in this game. I think the 97 game in Ann Arbor was pretty cold, but again, there wasn't snow involved. I'm trying to picture snow in the air during an Ohio State-Michigan game, and I can't.
I can't either. And so I think we got to go way back. You go way back, like 1950, one of the most popular games. Before Bo and Woody was the 1950 Snow Bowl. And I remember correctly, there were 40 collective punts between both teams in that game. Insane. And Michigan won that game 9-3. But here's the thing, the weather forecast, it says snow showers starting at noon. So we're not talking about just snow. It's snow showers starting at noon. And now, another interesting thing to add is it looks like you're looking at 30 degrees. So you may not only get a little bit of snow, but you also may get actual some, rain, freezing rain with it. And I think that's going to have a significant impact on the game. I think so anyways. Another thing and I don't know if you've heard anything about this, Mark, but another thing that's been in the Twitter sphere, another thing that a lot of people are talking about is this referee named Kevin Schwartzel. Have you heard the talk on Twitter about this referee named Kevin Schwartzel?
No.
So he's a referee. I guess he was barred from refereeing in a game in 2006 because he's openly an OSU fan. He's also part of that infamous 2016 call with JT Barrett. Whether whether you think he was short or he got it, but he was part of that infamous call. I went back and watched the video with his calls, and anyone who's objective, it's very clear he's calling pass interference on Michigan, but he's not calling pass interference on OSU. But anyways, it's gaining a lot of attention. Even Michigan media is picking up on it. Like David Schuster is like tagging Joel Klatt and things like this. Which is interesting. But if you go back and watch the video because some Michigan fan put together the snippets of the terrible calls from his game, and they are horrendous. It's quite amazing that the Big Ten would allow someone with such bias to be involved in refereeing.
And what's this guy's name again?
And then again, the referee's name is Kevin Schwartzel. Schwartzel is Schwarzel, Kevin Schwartzel. Yeah, but nonetheless, I called in early in the season when I spoke to you, and I said the perception then was that this was not going to be a competitive game, given Michigan's season from last year, and of course, many OSU fans laughed at even people talking about it being a game. and I think it's going to be a close game. I don't see it being 3 scores, given the environment, given how desperate this Michigan team is. As Jim Harbaugh said, we're going to beat Ohio State or die trying. This is a different Michigan team. In years past, than Michigan generally been punched in the mouth. Infamous Mike Tyson saying everyone has a game plan until they're punched in the mouth. This Michigan team, when punched in the mouth this season, has responded, and for the most part, which is different from Michigan teams in the past. So I'm expecting a close game. If I had to put a score on it, I would say Michigan wins this 41-34. Not too different. Now I didn't know the snow was coming. I think I would adjust that score if I knew the score is going to be. I think it's going to be lower than 41-34 given the snow. What are your thoughts on the snow and the weather, and how big of a role do you think that's going to play on the score, if any?
Well, I'm trying to envision. I do think that, we've got a quarterback in C.J. Stroud who's from California. I can't imagine that he's ever played in anything close to that. So different players respond different ways. One of the great cold weather quarterbacks in the history of the NFL is from Southern Mississippi. So he responded fine, despite not playing in it until he got to the NFL. One of the greatest passing performances you will see was by Tom Brady of the Patriots in a snowstorm where they scored 59 points. So I think wind is a greater deterrent to the passing game, but again, depends how much we're talking about. I think that some weather conditions can play into the hands of the offense because they know where they're going. Now, if it becomes the snow is falling so hard that it's, difficult to navigate on the field, then.
Just so you know, Mark, 7 to 8 mile per hour wind.
Yeah.
For tomorrow's game.
And that seems reasonably standard. Nothing that drastic. So, yeah, weather does not help offense or passing game generally, but there are some exceptions.
There are exceptions. Well, I think that this Michigan team is it's well suited this year to go up against Ohio State. Now you have the weather on top of it. I don't know. I think there's a perfect storm brewing in Ann Arbor, and one of the most recent Michigan games that I can think of where I think that the weather made a difference was that night road game. Michigan went to who they played against. Who did they play against? It was raining. It was a night game a few years ago. Was it the Fighting Irish? I think that game.
They certainly scored enough points that night. Yeah, that was like 45-14.
Yeah, that game is. I'm trying to think of the last time I watched a game with Michigan, and I think that's the game. I think that game had a lot to do. I think that the precipitation in that game played a big part. We'll see what happens. But once again, I think that you're going to see a 7-point Michigan victory tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. And I predicted early in the season I thought Michigan would get here. They have, and I thought that they'd have a chance to beat Ohio State. Forecasting that Michigan will beat Ohio State, and we'll see what happens. But I'm excited. You have a great show. You keep up the great work. And I will talk to you soon, Mark. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for the call. Enjoy the game. So some of you out there may own a business, and if you don't already, you've thought about it. You would like to own a business, but think it's difficult from a funding standpoint, from a credit standpoint, but you can get business credit ironically, by finding out those things from a YouTube channel from our guy Josh Van Horn on Get Business Credit. And he must be doing amazing things. I know that he's doing amazing things there, teaching people how to access business credit, regardless of what their personal credit looks like. So even if you've got poor personal credit, that's not going to affect his instruction, his education, and his ability to get you access to business credit to fund your business venture. So if you've got a business right now and you need to expand, you need to grow, you need new equipment, whatever you need funding, then he's the guy to check out. Or if you think, hey, I want to start a business, where do I get started? From that standpoint, from a financing standpoint, he is the guy to check out at Get Business Credit. Josh Van Horn's your guy. And check out his YouTube channel, because my goodness, I am very thankful that mine is growing, my YouTube channel. But compared to his, he is helping people over there, and his is exploding. He blew me away in subscribers in a couple months. I'm at this for 10 years. He's at it for a couple months, because he is truly helping people. So check out Josh's work at Get Business Credit on YouTube right there. Okay, so we've got 3 people on the lines. Let's take these 3 calls, and then we will shut it down for the night. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Oh, fantastic. Just sort of, I don't know, just not knowing what to make of this Cincinnati performance tonight. They won comfortably against a decent opponent, and left a whole lot of on the field. Like, probably played like a C performance tonight, and won by almost 4 scores. Against a reasonable opponent.
Yeah.
And hard to be too upset, but not really anything to get me too pumped about either.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm sort of say that last caller sort of emphasized everything I wanted to talk about calling in tonight. I am a native Ohioan, native from Southern Ohio. A Buckeye fan, but primarily a Bearcat fan. And I've lived most of my life in Michigan. Moved here when I was young. And I have dealt with callers like the last guy you had my entire life, making every goddamn excuse for Michigan and just sort of getting away with it. And just sort of giving this sort of just sort of getting this fragrance of credibility, from the media, from the CFP rankings. Oh yeah, you really did get screwed against Michigan State. We'll rank you higher than Michigan State, even though it makes no goddamn sense whatsoever. Oh yeah. Well, you will let you whine for 5 years about a 4th down call that was actually called right on the field, but you can't get over because you're too immature to handle the results of it. It just drives me crazy. Like, I'm not even that hardwired against Michigan fans, but living here for almost 30 years has just made me freaking despise these people. There's so much entitlement to this fan base. There's so much whining to it. There's so much false respect. There's no way on earth they should be a 7-point dog tomorrow. 7 or 8. They should be a 20-point dog. They are not in the same stratosphere of talent as Ohio State. They don't have the same coaching. They haven't put anywhere close to the same result. They don't deserve this respect. And they continue to fucking get it. I'm sorry, pardon my language. They continue to get this. You hear me?
Oh, I hear you.
Hello?
Yeah. So you want me to
Yeah, so,
respond
I mean,
to
like,
it? Well, if I was a Michigan fan, I would be upset.
No. I was just hoping. I lost my language there for a second. I was hoping I wasn't cut off there. I apologize for that, but they continue to get this respect that they frankly don't deserve. Why were they ranked ahead of Michigan State in that ranking?
Vegas is
Why?
not.
Because
Vegas is not making point spreads because they respect Michigan. They could care less about Michigan. They could care less about Ohio State. They could care less about Alabama or East Carolina. They just make point spreads based on number crunching and based then on the response of the public will move the line. But that's when you cite the point spread, Vegas doesn't care. They don't have more respect for Michigan than they do for Northwestern. It's just a business
the point
to them.
spread is influenced by public opinion, right? The point spread is influenced by people in the media.
Once it's
respect,
released,
right? You know,
once it's released, yes. And that point spread, I don't think has moved much. So it's not like Vegas released it. It's not like Vegas released a 20-point spread and everybody bet it down to 7.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, like that never happens. I do this for semi-professional living. I follow these lines. I mean, lines don't change that drastically from when they're opened to where they finally settle at.
Sure. Well, that's my point.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, but I think the ridiculous spread in this game, the fact that this is a single digit spread is absurd to me. I mean, Ohio State has played 2 teams the past 2 weeks that are probably pretty close to Michigan's talent, Michigan's level of play. I don't think Purdue's like a significantly worse team than Penn State. And Penn State very narrowly beat Michigan.
Michigan beat Penn State.
I think it's Purdue.
Michigan beat Penn State.
Yes, Michigan beat Penn State.
You said Penn State beat Michigan.
Oh, I did that.
Okay.
Did I say that?
Yes.
No. Okay. I understand. It was a 21-17 game. Michigan scored in the last minute and a half of the game.
Yep.
Of that. It was a very, very tight game.
Yep.
It was several as a very, very tight game. And, what has Michigan shown to make people think that they're massively, massively better than Michigan State or Purdue? I don't exactly see it.
Well, for one,
they haven't played.
They're playing at home.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
They're playing at home, so
yeah.
That's like a 6-point swing right there. 3 points. Road, home, neutral. So, this game might be 13 or 14, 12 or 13, something in that range at Ohio State. It's generally a 3-point swing. So if they were playing a neutral site game, it would be Ohio State would be a 10-point favorite.
10-11. Yeah.
So that's part of it. And they played Michigan State and Purdue at home.
I mean, they played Michigan State and Purdue at home, and they could have named their score against either one of them.
Absolutely, they could have.
They were 30-point victors in both of those games.
Yep. There are certain games they could have named their score. Those 2 games are the 2 best teams that they've played that they just completely annihilated. And then they annihilated a bunch of bad teams, Rutgers, Indiana, Maryland, and Michigan played well against those teams, except for Rutgers. They barely beat. And they both
Indiana, they kind of flogged their
pretty
way
much
through too.
Pretty much killed 29-7.
But that was Indiana with the completely dysfunctional offense. Ohio State had 45 points at halftime against Indiana.
Sure.
Michigan scored 29.
If you look at common opponents, Ohio State has outplayed Michigan against everyone except for Nebraska. They both played Nebraska about the same. And they both played.
No, that's not true. That's not true at all.
Yeah, absolutely, it is true.
True.
Absolutely, it is true. Don't tell me it's not true.
Nebraska was driving with a chance to win that game, and their quarterback fumbled against Michigan.
Yes.
They lost by 2 scores against Ohio State.
Ohio State kicked a field goal with 90 seconds left in the game to make it a 2-score game.
That's much different than the other team.
It's not that much different. I was not nitpicking the game down to a microscopic T. I was basically saying generally they played roughly the same against Nebraska. Ohio State struggled in that game and was outplayed much of that game at Nebraska. They just were. They won the game. They did not look impressive.
I would very strongly dispute saying they were outplayed much of that game. They were never behind in that game ever.
That doesn't mean that they weren't out. That doesn't mean that they weren't outplayed from the time that they led 17-3 until the time it was a 23-17 game. They got outscored.
Yeah, I mean that's
they got outscored 14-6 for that quarter and a half to 2 quarters. They were outplayed. Well, I'm not going to nitpick through all this. I appreciate the call. Enjoy the game.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call.
Have a good one.
You too. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's online?
Hey, Mark and Michael. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, Michael. What's going on?
Not much. Hey, I got a question. I was seeing some stuff with the Air Force UNLV game. Yeah, I know UNLV that good. But have you ever seen a game before to where a team did not throw a pass?
Where a team did not throw a pass. I know that there's been a few. I know that there's been a few here in the last several years. I'm not really keeping track, but what game was there not a pass thrown?
The Air Force game, they ran the ball 60. Every single play was a run play.
Oh,
which isn't really surprising.
Today's game?
Yes, against UNLV.
Oh, I'll have to check that box score out. Okay.
Yeah, 69 plays, 511 yards rushing.
Wow. Well, they obviously didn't need to throw. That's shoot. They're averaging like 7 yards a carry.
Mm-hmm.
They scored 48 points.
Anyway, I do have a question. I was listening to the game, Washington State game on Westwood One. They were saying something about if Oregon State wins tomorrow night, Washington State wins the Pac-12 North.
Yes.
I thought Oregon. How's that working?
How does that work?
Yeah, did they beat Oregon State this year? I don't know. I'm just asking.
There would be a 3-way tie. So they would have a 3-way tie, all at 6-3, and Oregon State beat Oregon. Let's see. I'd have to go through all the logistics, but it goes by the round robin between those 3. So if one of them went 2-0 against the other 2, then they win the division. The next tiebreaker would be best division record. Oregon lost all of its games. Well, 2 of its 3 games against the division. So I don't remember exactly who beat whom. But that's what it comes down to is the round robin between the 3 and then the division record.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that because I didn't know if Washington State beat both LSU. Not LSU, sorry. Oregon and Oregon State already this year. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, all you have to do is look up
the schedule.
Yeah, all you have to do is look up the Oregon State Washington State game. So I'm guessing that again, those are the division tiebreakers in any division, basically. They're pretty similar.
Let's see. Okay, so they did beat Oregon State, and they lost to Oregon. So I guess they're waiting Oregon State to beat Oregon tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which I guess was done right.
They all three would tie
no,
at 6 and 3.
I was asking, and Oregon would actually end up winning the. No, I was just asking because I didn't know if the Oregon State. So Oregon State pretty much can't win to represent the Pac-12 North.
No,
because
it's
they
between
lost,
Washington State. It's between Washington State
that's what I was
and
asking.
Oregon.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with the clement weather supposedly hitting Michigan tomorrow, how huge is the running game going to be with both teams tomorrow up in Ann Arbor?
With the game, with the weather, what did you say about the weather?
Yeah, the inclement weather with the snow and stuff like that, and wind. I kept saying all week that it's going to be the running game is going to make the difference in the game, and I'm still sticking to that. Do you think that's going to be a difference tomorrow? Do you think?
If you go back through every Ohio State-Michigan game, the team that averages more rushing yardage and better yards per carry wins the game. It's been like 17 or 18 years in a row.
No, I'm asking, in your opinion, tomorrow, is that going to be the difference in the game, you think?
And I just said that in the last 17 or 18 years that the team that's run the ball better has won the game. So I wouldn't expect that to magically change tomorrow unless one of them fumbles 4 times.
Yeah, I was wondering. So what are you going to be snacking, munching on during the game tomorrow?
What's that?
I said, what are you going to be eating during the game tomorrow?
What am I going to be eating?
Like normal snack?
Yeah, I've not really given that much thought.
Yeah, not bad. I was just wondering. Then, all right, hey, thanks, Mark. Talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Yep. You too.
All right. Dave, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate that so much. While we're on the topic of snow, what does Dave have to say? One of the snow games that I went to was the 17-16 Notre Dame Penn State game. Yeah. Remember that one? When the bus had one of the best games ever of his college career. Prediction for Wisconsin, Minnesota, 23-16. Gophers row the boat. It's been explained to me probably 5 times what that means at the end there. Skiuma. Did I get that right? And I never remember. So if anybody explains that in the chat, I appreciate it, but I won't remember for another 5 minutes. Wisconsin, Minnesota, Gophers win 23-16. Okay. Then we would see Iowa take on either Michigan or Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. Quite interesting. All right. Folks, if you're starting a business or if you have a business and you need business credit, you're concerned about it, you don't know where you're going to go, you don't have great personal credit yourself, don't be concerned with that. Don't be concerned with having to give out your social security number. Check out Josh Van Horn's YouTube channel, Get Business Credit. There it is right there. Get Business Credit. His YouTube channel is exploding. Mine's growing. His is exploding because he's given out such great advice there at Get Business Credit. So we direct you to his YouTube channel there, Get Business Credit with Josh Van Horn, the guy who is solving all sorts of issues for people all over the place that are running small businesses. And whether that's to get you access to thousands of business credit lines or just to instruct you on the process. So that is the place to be right there with our guy Josh at Get Business Credit, our sponsor here at the Voice of College Football. So I would ask all of you who are either involved in small business or are interested in starting a small business that is a great place to start right there. All right. We will take these 2 calls here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Mark.
Yes.
Did you see that game today?
There were 16 games today. Which one are we talking about?
Oh, yeah. I'm talking about UCF, USF.
No, did not see that one.
It was so good. Gus Malzahn was all hobbled over on the sideline. He was walking on crutches.
He was on
They
crutches
won in the last
on the
second of
sideline.
the game.
He was
Yeah,
actually
he's
on crutches. I wouldn't think that they would allow that.
This is Hollywood, man.
17
It kind of blanked me out from all the other games, watching that traumatizing experience of Gus Malzahn. He went across the field at the end of the game on crutches to shake the other coach's hand, you know?
Okay. Interesting. Don't think I've seen that.
Is there any way possible that Michigan can beat Ohio State tomorrow?
Oh, heck yeah.
On
there
a scale
is.
of 1 to 10.
Sure.
Really? You think it's 50-50?
I thought you've already asked me this question. I know somebody's asked me on a scale of 1 to 10, and I said like 3.5, about 35% chance.
That's good. I like that, actually. That's very good, Mark.
Yeah.
That's very fair. I think that's very fair.
If you checked out my picks today on Patreon, 4-1 against the spread.
4-1. Damn. I'm so hooked on roulette, Mark. I got like 20 roulette systems I use, you know? I just can't bring myself to bet on football.
It is addicting.
I would rather trust a bouncing ball bouncing around or spinning wheel than football, you know?
I went to Vegas a couple years ago with a buddy of mine, and he got me into roulette, and I could have played it like 20 hours a day.
Yeah. Hey, can I take 30 seconds and tell you a story?
Yes.
I had 30 seconds.
30
I
seconds.
got out of prison like a happy.
Yes.
I got out of prison about 6 months earlier for nothing. None of my fault, you know?
Yeah.
I was like, I had $5 and I walked out with $1,400, and all I did was put money on roulette, you know?
Is that your story?
No. I was in there for like 4 hours. I was up to $1,600. I could have left with $1,600. And I walked outside and I had $5 left. I was so broke, I had $5 left. And I thought to myself, you're not in prison, you're not in jail, you're not in trouble. Get back in there and do it. And I left with $1,100 just playing roulette. I never left the roulette table.
Well done, George.
It's a lot better than betting on football. I'll tell you that right now. It's instant money, instant gratification.
So if you bet on a football game and watch it for 3 hours, that's fairly instant.
Ben, do you have any jokes for you guys? You got any good jokes?
Don't have any good jokes. I'm trying to get through this show. It's what we're working on right now. All right, George. Call me back tomorrow if you'd like, and we will talk to you then.
Big day.
I love when people keep talking after I said goodbye to them in a very courteous way, and then they keep talking. Then I feel bad because I cut them off because they said bye. I said bye. I had somebody on the other night. They must have said goodbye like 7 times. All right. I was going to take 2 more calls, and I think we're up to like 5. So I'm taking these 2 right here. The voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Mr. Rogers, how you doing, sir? This is Rhino 26.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I don't want to keep you long. I just want to kind of talk about the Big 12. Obviously Baylor, Oklahoma State, OU, in a position to kind of play for the Big 12 title. I'm an OU fan. I regularly attend, Uncle Lou, Pete, different people. I found your channel, but I just, I kind of wanted to put in my 2 cents on the Big 12.
Sure.
Obviously, they're still in stake for the playoff bid, potentially, not necessarily. But I really think OSU Baylor is going to be the Big 12. Well, they're going to be playing for the Big 12 title. Seeing Baylor play Oklahoma State's defense, kind of what's your opinion on the Big 12 as far as OU, Oklahoma State playing tomorrow, and obviously Baylor playing tomorrow, getting into the Big 12 title. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that if I knew nothing about the teams prior to the season, if I didn't know their name brands or who was supposed to be the best, just watch the football that I've watched this year, I am the most impressed with Oklahoma State. I think they have significantly the best defense in the conference, and the running game. The first time I was impressed with it was when they took over the game against Texas in the second half and just slammed Jalen Warren ahead about 25 times in the second half. And Spencer Sanders is taking care of the football, which is a good thing for him to do. And I just think they have by far the most solid team that I can trust. However, we know what the track record is between OU and Oklahoma State. And we know that, I think that Oklahoma played maybe its best defensive game last week against Iowa State. They did give up some key drives in the fourth quarter and almost blew the game at the end, but held in the red zone. And of course, people are finding out that Caleb Williams isn't just going to show up and be a superstar. Despite how he played out of the gate against Texas, he struggled in recent weeks, and it'll be interesting to see if he struggles, how Lincoln Riley handles that situation. I think Oklahoma State's playing the best football, but it's similar to Ohio State, Michigan in regards to what could be a psychological advantage between the two teams. Baylor, how many times have I seen Baylor? I saw a little bit against BYU, but I saw most of the game against Oklahoma State. I saw some of the game against Iowa. I saw of course, an impressive defensive performance was them against Oklahoma. They had control of that game pretty much all the way through. So I believe Oklahoma State's going to win this game against Oklahoma, but I would not be surprised if they don't, just because Oklahoma's technically a more talented team and, of course, has the track record of winning this game.
I agree. I agree with your assessment only because, obviously I'm a fan, but given the, of course, rivalry and different, given the fact that every year is different with any kind of rivalry game, I can see Oklahoma State winning this year, putting a halt to kind of the Lincoln Riley era, Big 12 championship. Do you have any kind of opinion? I don't think Lincoln Riley's going anywhere, but obviously there's being a lot of different coaching jobs open. I don't see him going anywhere, but do you have an opinion on that if he is going to go anywhere?
Well, unfortunately, in this day and age, everybody's got an opinion online, and so we see all sorts of crazy coaching names that are thrown out anytime there's a job opening. So I didn't take it seriously when I first heard about Lincoln Riley maybe a week ago. I really didn't take it seriously. I just thought, okay, well, just anybody who writes blogs or produces videos can get attention by stating that there are certain coaching candidates out there. But I'm now hearing more and more from more credible sources that tend to make me believe that there might be something to it. And especially considering that he's making $7.5 million at Oklahoma, and the numbers that are being thrown out are more like $12 million at LSU, which, as I stated to an earlier caller, it's routine that the numbers that we hear out in the media and online about these coaching contracts are almost always blown out of proportion compared to what they realistically turn out to be. but I would not be surprised if LSU offered him $10 million a year. And depending on how he perceives Oklahoma's move to the SEC, and how I don't personally know how happy he is there versus what he would perceive to be his ability to recruit and build a championship program at LSU. You know, we've had the debate on here a number of times from a number of people as to which is the better program. And I don't think there's a definite answer. I think it's a good debate. I think there are valid points on both sides. Certainly Oklahoma has been a more consistent winner the last 15 to 20 years, while LSU has been able to win 3 national championships. So
I agree.
Those are my basic thoughts
Mr.
there.
Rogers, I'm going to let you go, but I do want to kind of end on this note that if, Riley did go to LSU, I do think OU would go after Brent Venables since he is the previous OU coordinator.
Yeah.
So I think that would be kind of a, unique dynamic because OU is also, I know everybody out there thinks LSU is a better coaching job than OU, but I also think that they may be on the same level. So I think somebody out there, whether it's a coordinator, offensive coordinator, looking at that, knowing that that's going to be on the premium level. So just to let you go, Mr. Rogers, that's my opinion on it. I think Brent Venables, I think OU would be calling him if Lincoln Riley did go.
Well,
so
thank you so much.
Appreciate what you do, and I will. Yes, sir. I will talk with you later.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Enjoy the game tomorrow night.
Yes, sir.
Huge game in the Big 12. OU, Oklahoma State. I had stated earlier that it was a noon game. I just had that in my head. Just Oklahoma seems to be playing at noon every week. So I clearly know that it's a primetime game on ABC. One more call. I hate this for those people that are on the line, but I had stated like 7 calls ago that I was going to take 2 more calls. So I've taken like 7. But I appreciate everybody jumping on board. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Hello?
Hi, this is Edward.
Hey, Edward. How are you?
Hey, doing good. So you made a prediction earlier about Cincinnati going undefeated. I don't know if you remember. That was a long time ago. That was like before the start of the season. So they did go undefeated. Should they be in the playoffs?
Oh, wow. I think that any team that goes undefeated should be in a playoff. But unfortunately, we've not created a playoff that has enough spots. So I think that Cincinnati should be rewarded for what they've done, especially considering they're in a conference where this conference has roughly been the equivalent of the Pac-12 or the ACC minus Clemson the last couple of years. It's been really good. Now, the conference is not as good this year as it has been the last couple of years. There's a number of teams not as good. UCF, Memphis.
They can only play. Yeah, I understand. But they can only play the games that they are scheduled to play. They can only do that.
Absolutely. That's all they can do. And on top of that, they went out and scheduled Notre Dame and Indiana on the road. I don't know when they scheduled the Indiana game, but obviously we have seen Indiana play really good football the last few years and expected that to be a significant game. Well, Indiana's turned out to be the worst team in the Big Ten. So that win pretty much is non-consequential now. We thought it was a big deal at the time, but that's a complete Cincinnati did not dominate them. It was a close game, and Indiana's awful. They're a 2-9 football team. Now, they were a better team then with their quarterback.
Right. What I thought was interesting as a fan is earlier on in the season, I don't know, you can rewind and go back and watch your videos. You said that it would be kind of fun to watch Cincinnati win out. And it kind of like leave the head scratching of the playoff committee, and that's exactly what's happening. The playoff committee is watching; they're having to scratch their head, and and they're having to go, what? You know, what? Cincinnati is undefeated? And I love it. I love it. This is the best college football season I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, for as much as I love college football, I stated a number of times during the offseason that it's become rather boring to know that out of a collection of 5 or 6 teams, that 4 of them are going to make the playoffs for sure. Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Clemson. Out of those 6, 4 of them will make the playoff. That's been pretty much going on the entire time. That now that we've got Cincinnati involved, we've got Clemson knocked out. Who knows? The committee may come down to a situation where they've got to compare Cincinnati versus an Alabama team that just lost an SEC championship game by 1 or 2 points, but has 2 losses, or they've got to compare Cincinnati against a Big 12 champion with 1 loss. Or there may just be a spot for Cincinnati. If the SEC gets 2 spots and either the Big 10 or the Big 12 has an upset involved, that conference is going to get knocked out. Let's say Wisconsin wins the Big 10 championship game. They're going to knock out the Big 10. Or Baylor wins the Big 12 championship game. They're going to knock out the Big 12, and Cincinnati's going to comfortably make the Final Four.
Let me ask you this scenario. Let's say, hypothetically, Ohio State loses and Alabama loses. Does Cincinnati get in?
Ohio State loses when? Tomorrow?
Well, let's say that. Wait, let me back up. Let me clarify. Okay, Ohio State loses to Michigan. Alabama loses to Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And Cincinnati. Well, let me think about this here. Cincinnati wins out. Does Cincinnati make it to the playoffs?
What does Michigan do in the Big 10 championship game?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a scenario where Cincinnati would actually make it into the playoffs.
Oh, there are plenty of scenarios in which they can make the playoff.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of one because they're undefeated. So how do you eliminate Cincinnati? I mean, the playoff committee, I don't know how they think, but it seems to me like as long as they keep winning, they would have to be in the playoffs.
This is the only possible way Cincinnati can be eliminated, is if either Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, and both of them will make the playoff. So there are 2 spots. And Ohio State wins out and wins the Big 10. So there's the 3rd spot. And then let's say Oklahoma State defeats 2 more top 10 teams, which would happen in winning their game against Oklahoma tomorrow, and then also winning a Big 12 championship game. And the committee deems their 12-1 season and several wins against top 10 teams to be more valid than Cincinnati's, and jumps Oklahoma State over Cincinnati. That's the only way they're not going to make the playoff, if they go undefeated.
Well, I think it's pretty cool. If you go back and timestamp your video way back early in the season, you had kind of predicted Cincinnati to be in the playoffs. Maybe I should comment that to you, but I don't know if you remember that, but it was really cool. But the way you could predict that like a year in advance is pretty awesome. Hey, I love you, brother. I love your videos, and I've subscribed. And
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for the call. We appreciate you, and thank you so much for watching and for the kind words. And you're obviously a Bearcats fan, so that's a huge game against Houston coming up. And so good luck.
Yeah. Oh, we'll see.
All right. We do have one individual who's been waiting, so here we go. I think this is about 8 calls since I was going to take the final 2. Here we go. Let's end on this one.
Hey, Mark.
Oh,
Hey, Mark, it's George. I'm talking to Uncle Rico in your live stream, and he asked me to call you.
Okay. Who asked?
Uncle Rico.
Okay. Well, and for
he's
what
on there,
purpose?
if you
Why
look.
doesn't he call?
No, he wants us to do a live stream every week. And
You
D-Dog
and I,
forever said, yeah,
the two of
tell
us should do a live stream.
yeah, but on a different channel so we don't use your income stream.
Okay.
Uncle Rico just live.
Is he?
Uncle
What,
Rico,
how much is he? How much is he
live.
paying for this?
He'll probably pay you $20 not to do it.
$20.
He just changed his mind. He just said, I did not lie. This man is a felon. LOL. LOL. But I can spin back and see what he said.
I'll take
He did say it.
$150 for a 1 hour live stream each week.
All right, Uncle Rico, for $150, Mark Rogers will not do a stream ever with me.
There it is.
Alan Nim said, Rico is killing me. G-Dog Forever said, you should have said you're someone else, a Middle Tennessee State fan, George. How did Middle Tennessee State do today?
2:01 a.m. And George, you're calling for a second time. You're abusing my good nature and you're abusing your status on my channel.
I'm not. You should be reading your chat. Uncle Rico said George is throwing me under the bus. Then Robert Penstara said $150 an hour, not bad. And then Jeff Webster said, hang up for me, Mark, please. And then Cheryl made a laughy face. And then Todd Malicote said, George is just going to read the side chat to Mark. How entertaining. And then G-Dog Forever made a smiley face. And then Traveling Full said of Coach had any. You see, you need to just leave the live chat up all night. We'll just sit here and talk shit to each other all night. Uncle Rico said hashtag free George. I agree with that. Free George. You see, you created a monster.
I guess I've got myself to blame.
Hey, Mark,
yes.
Listen, in all honesty, I've known you like 4 years.
Yeah.
Since you have like 200 fans or something.
Uh-huh.
This guy, G-Dog Forever, he has been sending you an email for 4 weeks in a row.
Who?
And I was on live stream with you.
Yeah.
And you told him, just email me one night. He had a question. You said, email me, right?
Is this the Georgia guy that wants a
4
helmet?
weeks later, and I think it's something about the helmet.
He emailed me like 2 days ago. It wasn't 4 weeks ago. I got an email like 2 days ago about a Georgia helmet.
Back, you'll probably see them. Either way, we're not going to fight about trivialities and frivolous things, but
yes,
just answer
I
email,
respond to people. I've got a lot to do. I'm not going to sit here and complain about everything I have to do, but my goodness.
What's that boy you're doing all day? It's time to teach him how to answer your email.
Yes. Yes, I'm answering plenty of email. All right, George. We will talk soon.
All right. Tell Robert Testaro I'm not an abusive person.
Okay. Have a good one. Oh, my word. Seriously. Get business credit. We usually have about 3,000 people watch these videos eventually. I wonder how many of those people out there, of you out there, either own a business, have a small business like mine, very small business. There's one of me. So George, I don't have time to answer everybody's emails all the time, but I do ask that people do send me emails and I will respond. Might take a day, might take a week, but I respond to all my email. I can't respond to everybody's comments on the channel, or I would not be posting videos to 25 channels. That I'm very honest with everyone. I appreciate all your comments. I get to some of them, but very few, because if I was spending all my time responding to your questions, then I could not build a business or record 12 hours a day for content on 25 channels. That's just the way it is. So until we get a salesperson and an operations manager and a few other things, then that's just the way it is. All right. But if you get a small business and you need to access lines of credit, we've got the guy for you. Josh Van Horn at Get Business Credit. It's right here on YouTube. And he's got better thumbnails than I do. Believe me, they're much better than I do. Like when I'm building my thumbnails, I think these look pretty good until I see people that can really make some nice thumbnails. And then I'm like, yeah, mine aren't so great. But I build all those thumbnails too. So that takes some time, George. All those thumbnails. So anyway, get business credit. You don't need a social security number. You probably do need one, but not for get business credit. But you do need to head on over there. And I watched his channel he had me locked in there for like a half hour the other day. I couldn't believe I was watching for that long because he was educating everyone that runs a small business or wants to own a small business. He can save you a ton of money. He can save you a ton of time and put you in line to access credit. Tons of business credit lines that you can access. All right. I will be here after the game, Ohio State, Michigan. And I'm going to be watching as many noon games as I possibly can, but Ohio State, Michigan takes priority. Florida State play at noon, and I forget who else, but I'll be watching. I will be watching across the board. I think there's a game in the Big 12 that's. Wait a minute. Let me see. Come on. I need to get a new laptop too. Let's get some more sponsors here. This thing is slow. All right. At noon, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia Tech on ABC. I got to think that this is going to be the worst rating ABC has received for a college football game this year. Georgia Tech. Anyway, Texas Tech, Baylor, big game for the Baylor Bears tomorrow. Oh, Wake, BC, big game there. Wouldn't it suck for Cincinnati if UConn beat Houston? Not going to happen. Florida State, Maryland, Rutgers. That's a bowl eligible game right there. We should all be talking about Maryland, Rutgers. Why people were not calling about that game? Enormous game in the Big Ten tomorrow at noon Eastern. Maryland, Rutgers. Bowl eligibility on the line. That's it at noon. Ohio State, Michigan. That's my number one game. And, Florida State, even though they both suck and there are better teams playing, it's just Florida State. You put certain uniforms on the TV screen in front of me, and I'm just going to be like back in 1996. And Florida State's one of them. Wake needs to beat Boston College to get to the ACC championship game. That is big. And, of course, Baylor needs to win and hope. Appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much for being here. You guys are amazing. Thank you for the contributions. You can hit me up at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App if you choose to bypass YouTube, and you know what that means. Wink, wink. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search MarkRogersTV. You'll find me there. Shop Amazon. When you do, please use the link that we provide in the description section of any of the videos to shop Amazon. And get on over right now to Get Business Credit right here on YouTube to help you get started in the business world, the small business world. That would be the way to do it right there. Get Business Credit, or if you do have a small business and you're looking to expand. That should do it. I will see you after Ohio State, Michigan, right here. And then I will see you late night tomorrow night to wrap it all up right here at the Voice of College Football. And regardless of who you root for, I'm sure you will have it stated in your prayers tonight to either snow, or hold off. God, and please let us play with no snow tomorrow. I don't know which way you lean, but wow, snow in Ann Arbor could be interesting at noon Eastern. We will be here to talk about it here at the Voice of College Football.